Because it will bring competitiveness. It will bring our youth playing football absolutely together in the programs that they need to be playing in, that as they grow, they are learning from 7 years old up to their sophomores, juniors, and senior years. But what an amazing program. So that's what I have. I would encourage you to contact me and let's talk about this a little bit further. I fully support your recreation program as well. And I've made attempts to reach out to them to talk to them about this, as well as Clinton City and West Point City. The time is coming, and it will soon be here. And I would just encourage you to take a deeper look at your program to see what this program can help with. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris. Council, is there anyone of you who would like to be the contact point for Chris in this meeting?
Can you, Dave? Dave, would you be the contact point then? And you're catching us at a kind of a change in pattern. We're going to be talking about the Parks Advisory Board tonight and rewriting its ordinance. So we're kind of in an eddy right now, but we're going to move forward. So
yes, I appreciate it. And again, there's just not me. There's several here. There's 3 coaches that are already leaving Syracuse. There's a few that are leaving Clinton. It's not Clearfield High's program. It's not Syracuse High's program. This is still every bit of Syracuse City's program. And I look forward to working with them to be able to make the program successful.
I agree with you, but leadership always begins with the first one. Thank you.
You're exactly right. Thank you, sir.
Just a thought, maybe this should go to Parks Advisory.
If you want, since I'm the liaison, I can take this.
Council, how do you feel about it? You good with that?
We're willing to listen to anybody and see what they have to say.
Okay,
I
Cresta.
think it would be crazy not to.
So yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay, Cresta, would you then take that to the Parks Advisory Board for the council? All right. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am. I'm wearing my computer glasses. I can see you're in Raspberry, but I can't see your face.
This is Mika. Mika.
Hi, Mika. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mayor. So just good evening. Thank you for letting me have a chance to take a minute. My name is Nika Peterson. I'm Clearfield City Council. I just wanted to take a minute and recognize one of your officers, Officer Carlson. And the reason for that is he gave my 18-year-old son a ticket. Thank you. Perhaps I should explain briefly. My son works at Rush and was on his way home from a late evening shift, and that day had swapped cars with my husband. His needed some work, we switched cars. My husband's car has sat in our driveway for a year since COVID shut down. We haven't driven it hardly at all. Our son's not super familiar with it. And so when he came home at 10:30, he flipped the lights almost all the way on. So the lights were on inside the car, but he was driving totally dark. And as you'd imagine, he was pulled over on Antelope. And in the course of that, they realized the registration was expired on that car by 7 months. So when our son got home late, he very, frustratedly explained to us that he'd been pulled over and given a ticket for having, the expiration that far, and that, our car could have been towed. So why am I here? I'm here to tell you, thank you to your officer for the way that he handled that. We went back and checked and found out it was we had taken the car in that summer to get some work done and thought the registration was handled. And for some reason, we didn't get it done, but that's totally our fault as the car owners for not just making sure. And it sat in the driveway and we just had no idea. This is the first time our son has been pulled over, miraculously. I would have expected it to have been earlier, but my point is, he got to see law enforcement, I think, at its everyday finest. That officer was pleasant, professional, and courteous, explained to our son that extra whole clicking thing and the whole lights out front that helps out quite a bit. But more than that, my son got to see an officer make a really reasoned judgment call. We absolutely deserve that ticket. Oh my goodness. And we paid it, and you guys have $50 more in your fines and forfeiture budget because that was my mistake. But he saw that the officer could have towed his car and didn't. Instead, he took a couple of minutes to sit and figure out what was going on and realized that even though he's 18, this was a high school kid coming home after a long shift. And if the plates were 7 months expired, it was probably mom and dad's fault and not his. And so he sent his with a message to mom and dad of, hey, you should go get your car registered, which we did. and found out that that was our mistake. So much of our public dialogue right now on law enforcement and some very needed and important changes, I think tends to look at the extremes and everybody involved. And we make generalizations as all officers are, all people they come in contact are. And we paint each other with the worst strokes. So I am sure that this officer probably would never remember my son and probably has done this 100 times. But just thank you that my son's first interaction with law enforcement was to see them professional, to see it reasoned, and to see that there was a great balance of, we deserved a ticket, straight up. But that there was also that nuanced judgment of how to handle that. So as a mother, first of all, thank you. And as just a council member close, our city boundaries aren't super tidy. We're in your city a lot, and you are in ours. So thank you. It's just reassuring to know our community in general is protected, and then that's the kind of caliber we have. So thank you to not only Officer Carlson, but the rest of your department. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. We needed that. Anyone else that'd like to address the council? Yes. You come forward to state your name and place of residence.
Sorry, I'm not dressed up for this meeting. I'm a football coach. So my name is Michael Knight, and my address is 320 North, 3550 West in Layton, Utah. I just want to reiterate some of the things that Chris had mentioned about the football program, and not that anything needs to be said about it being inefficient or anything like that. But as far as where I came from Salt Lake, and I played in the Ute Conference, and I just know the feel that it brings to certain communities and what it does for not only kids, but parents and everybody involved. And when Chris approached me a few weeks ago, when I first came up here, I was kind of in awe at actually how it was currently being run, based on my kids are not all together. And I have some Clearfield kids over here and maybe some Layton kids over here, and parents talking about where they're taking their kid and so on and so forth. And to be honest, in high school football, that's one of the issues right now, is people are sending their kids where they think the grass is always greener. And it's not necessarily about where you live and your sense of pride and your community and the school. When I grew up, from the time I was in Murray School District, I knew I was a Murray Spartan. And there was something to be said about that. And sometimes I think sports can be the doormat to your high schools. And so I think for this opportunity to present itself with Chris a couple of weeks ago, calling me and mentioning that we could do this, it gave me goosebumps, because I know what it has done for me as a young athlete growing up and moving on and being a head football coach at a big time high school football program. It's been something that has taught me to be able to learn some of those things, taught me to be essentially where I'm at today as the head football coach at Syracuse High School. And so, I just want you guys to strongly consider these options, and I'm going to work and fully support this opportunity, and hopefully we can move forward with this, because I do see that it brings far more good for our communities than not having it there for us. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your input. Anyone else that would like to address the council? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public comment. Council, we're at item 3 is some recognition items. Chief, you wanted to recognize some volunteers, as I remember.
Thanks, Mayor. This was one of the things that just through concept of our online stuff, once I heard that we were going to do this one live, I felt was better holding until we were actually together. So the week of April 18th was set aside as National Volunteer Week. One purpose of that week is to recognize those who have given back to their community through their acts of service. For 8 years, Syracuse Police Department and the Syracuse Lions Club have partnered to form a Volunteers in Police Service, or as we call it, a VIPS program. We have worked together to raise money for charitable events, support Lions Club causes, and perform services for the public. In fact, our fingerprinting services have been performed entirely by the Lions Club members. The events of the past year made it unsafe for us to continue our program, so we had to take kind of an unfortunate hiatus. We missed our Lions Club friends. Last week, I had the pleasure of joining them for a club meeting. For those members who regularly help with our fingerprint program, I provided them with a pin to commemorate their service during COVID-19. I'm pleased to report that our Lions Club friends are doing well, and they are anxious to start our fingerprint program again, hopefully later this summer. So it's with great pride and admiration that I present the members of our Volunteers in Police Service program to the Mayor and Council for recognition. These individuals are not in attendance with us tonight because of potential health concerns. Starting off with Lynn John, Sandra John, Steve Anderson, Mike Eisenberg, Chris O'Shea, and Eric Ellington. We're very grateful for their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and we are very grateful for what the Lions do in our city. Any of you with any history in Syracuse will know that they have been a volunteer group that has volunteered freely of both labor and money to benefit the city. So thank you, Chief. Brody, is this next one yours? Are you got something to present? We're talking, or is this still you?
We've got a guest here.
We got a guest here to present to the chief.
So, Mayor and Council, tonight's kind of a culmination of several years of very hard work on behalf of our department to achieve accreditation through the Utah Chiefs of Police Association. Our accreditation was approved in late March, and we became only the 12th department in the state of Utah to be accredited. So with us tonight is Executive Director Val Shoup. I'll turn the time over to him.
Welcome, Val. Welcome to Syracuse.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be before you as Executive Director for the Utah Chiefs of Police Association. We're here, as Chief Atkin mentioned, to present the accreditation award to them, to give you a brief outline of what they had to do for this. As you know, in the turmoil that we have today in our nation with our law enforcement, it's imperative that we make sure that our law enforcement holds to the highest standards. And we, as Utah Chiefs of Police Association, promote that. We're very active in the legislature on the laws and different things that happen down there. And we have a certain set of standards for the accreditation process that are required. There are 185 standards that they have to fulfill. And those standards include city ordinances, state ordinances or state laws, and federal laws. They're required to make sure that they have a policy that adheres to those, each and every one of them. They have to show that they have an example where they've used it, if it's applicable. And they have to go through an accreditation process with an assessor. That accreditation continues through 5 years, and they have to reaccredit. Every year they have to send in an accreditation report that says they're up to standard, that they've included any new standards that have come forward, and that they put those in their accreditation standards. It's really interesting, and Chief Atkin mentioned you were the 12th city that has fulfilled that responsibility and that honor, and it is an honor because it takes a lot of work to do this, to get this set up. We have approximately 23 cities right now that are in the process. And so we're moving forward, and Chief Atkin is also one of our assessors, I might add. He helps assess other agencies as they come on board with their accreditation. And the new Power DMS that we have, which is the platform used for the accreditation, he's been very active in that and has actually helped promote that at the Utah Chiefs of Police Conference in St. George, which was very helpful to us. So having said that, I want to have Chief Atkin come forward, and we have a presentation to make to him. This says Syracuse City Police Department approved and accredited in recognition for the completion of the standards for certification and accreditation as prescribed and mandated by the Utah Chiefs of Police Association, March 2021. Congratulations, Chief.
Council, before COVID, we would all go down and shake Chief's hand and we would shake Val's hand too, but because of COVID, we're not going to do that. But what I would like to do is start on that end. Corinne, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Just that this is amazing that you guys are one of the few who've been able to get this accreditation done. And thank you for everything.
Seth, you?
Yeah, Chief, thank you. I think it's a testament to your guys' hard work that we see people coming in and sharing thoughts about the great policing that's occurring in our community and the strong relations. And all of your years of hard work are obviously paying off because we're making a difference in our own community. So thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Mr. Shoup.
David?
Thank you. And I'm not at all surprised to hear that the chief is part of the assessing group because he's always been such a mentor to others and accessible and just a shining pillar of your profession. And thank you for being a part of our city.
Thank you, David. Lisa?
First of all, I'm so grateful I live in this community and that you are our steward. I appreciate it so much. And as I looked through the our most recent survey that we put out about our police, I was so grateful to see how many citizens had wonderful interactions with our police force in every avenue that they had to assess. And that is especially because of our leadership. So thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Shoup, for being here.
Jordan?
I think they've said it. Kudos to an amazing police department. I have come to really appreciate just the sight of a squad car driving down the road. These guys get to see us on the worst days of our lives. These first responders are out there. They are trying to keep us safe, and they do an incredible job. We have so many expectations for the police. These a lot of times they're pretty young guys, and we expect them to cover the gambit of human emotional interactions and ideologies and everything, and they have to do so in a way that is professional, courteous, and you do it every day. So kudos to an amazing police department. Again, this does not surprise me at all that you guys have achieved this so quickly. And again, phenomenal job, and thank you for all you do. It's a testament to your leadership.
Thank you. Again, Val, thank you. Thank you for traveling and coming here and recognize our police department. Council Order Item 4, the approval of minutes. We have minutes of March 9th, 2021. The City Council business meeting on March 9th, 2021, a special redevelopment agency meeting. On March 23rd, the City Council work session meeting. March 23rd, a special City Council business meeting. And then on April 13th, a City Council business meeting. And many of these minutes are on here because of a mistake that was made by me in agendizing. And we got some things wrong and they were incorrect. So that's why we're going back so far. The minutes have been prepared for quite a while. So I would entertain a motion to either approve or a discussion of any one of those minutes.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Seth to approve all minutes.
Second.
I have a second from Lisa. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Council, we have a consent agenda. The item A is regarding the Arts Council, a proposed resolution R2118 approving amendments to the bylaws of the Syracuse City Arts Council. And item 2, proposed ordinance 2108 amending chapter 3.45 of the Syracuse City Code governing the Syracuse City Arts Council. We've discussed both of those at length in work sessions, and you've agreed to put them on a consent agenda. The other thing on the consent agenda is, Robert brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago, that the National Public Works Week is next week. And since we won't have a business meeting next week to proclaim it, I would like authorizations from you to proclaim through Proclamation 2104, recognizing National Public Works Week in Syracuse and recognizing our public works employees. So this is all on consent. Do I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
I have a motion from Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Boy, this seems like it's me doing all the talking. These last two are mine also. Council, we're just cleaning up a couple of 3 or 4 things that these individuals are already serving, but because of another mistake on my part, Ryan Wessel was not appointed to the Planning Commission to finish the term of a resigning Planning Commission member. And as you know, when the alternate takes the place of someone else, he gives up his alternate position and takes the position, including the expiration date of that former employee. So I would ask that by resolution, we appoint Ryan Wessel to the Syracuse Planning Commission. The other one is one that I really messed up on. If you can mess something up, I can do it two or three times over. Clarissa Wright has been interviewed by me, and I've sit down with Lori Smith, and we have discussed her as an additional advisor to the youth court. Now, she should have been approved last month, and by my mistake, that was missed. So I would propose Resolution 2117, appointing Clarissa Wright to the youth court as a youth court advisor. Any other discussion on this, council? I take a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous, Cassie. And thank goodness I can get off the microphone. Corinne, would you do the little introduction here to the North Davis Communities Care? And then would you mention the graduation sign?
Okay, for those of you who don't know about North Davis Communities That Care, I am the liaison to that for Syracuse City, and we are becoming a co-host as a city with CTC. And CTC is grateful for the partnership, very, very much so. It offers them a stabilizing force, if you will, because they have their own turnover, and it really helps if they have some places that will be here no matter what. And so, as you may or may not know, their emphasis in Syracuse, according to the studies that they have researched, is for preventing the starting of vaping and or stopping it, and then also prevention of depression longer than 2 weeks, trying to address that, and suicide prevention as well. And along with that, we're going to be having an illumination event September 1st, so mark it on your calendar. It's awesome. Best fireworks show you'll ever see. It's amazing. Okay, now we have this sign, proud of grads, because again, we have this lousy thing called COVID, and we know that these were really out in force a lot last year, but this year I think that these poor seniors have been affected even more so than last year. So if these are free to pick up at city offices here, and they would like you to sign out on a paper how many you're taking, and hopefully that you'll return them. They know that there will be loss. It will happen, but as much as possible, we are trying to reuse them and just to acknowledge that we're very proud of them. And that's one of the big things with CTC, is acknowledging good things that people are doing, and we are proud of our grads. So pick them up, tell your neighbors, and you don't need to senior to do this, okay? Put them in their yards, your yards, anywhere on the street. We just pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Is there anybody here from CTC?
Mayor, so we have a speaker online.
Do we have a speaker online?
Mhm.
Oh, Viviana?
Viviana?
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Viviana.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person today, but I do thank you for the flexibility of doing it this virtual. Thank you, Corian, for that lovely summary of CTCs. I work for Davis Behavioral Health, and I am a coalition coordinator for the North Davis area. And I'm here today because, as Corian said, we're hoping to get your co-sponsorship on some items that are coming up, some of which have been mentioned of illumination, but we're also looking for participation in some of the events that are already happening in Syracuse. As you know, last year was a COVID year, and right when we were ready to go with the programs and start pushing them out into the community, we weren't able to do so. So we have programs that are evidence-based that will address the factors that Corinne touched on, which are vaping, depression, and suicide ideation. And we want to get those out to the communities. The more families we have going through the programs, the better prepared we are as community and family to prevent those risk factors. And also to the recognition, right? Recognition is part of how we can also impact those numbers. So I won't go more into that, but tonight I'm here seeking continued support. And if this isn't the appropriate time to do this, let me know. I don't know where we are in the agenda. But continued support of these events, and I'll share it so that you can see what we're looking for. Okay, so we're looking for ongoing annual support of booth space at Heritage Days. We know that this is a big attraction for Syracuse community, and we're hoping to be able to have booth space there to share information about the programs that we have selected as North Davis Communities That Care Coalition. Syracuse Connection magazine space. We want to spread the word out, and if this is a piece of information that the community uses a lot, we would love a corner, a little space just so that we could share that. Illumination is our annual grand event that we have. It's 2 days of workshops for teens and family, where we give families and teens tools so that they can tools and tips so that they can be better prepared to address any symptoms of anxiety or depression, or in how to cope with those. And we're seeking for park rental as well as stage rental for illumination. This year, I will announce that we have a great lineup for our grand finale, which will be at Founders Park on September 1st. We have James Violet, who was on The Voice. He will be doing a set for us. And we also have Sarah Fry, who will be our keynote speaker and will deliver our message for illumination. And then in addition to that, we are seeking a one-time support of the use of Centennial Park for our Coalition Appreciation Night. This would be the first one that we do, but we're kicking it off in Syracuse City since the majority of our CTC members are from that area. Any questions?
Council, do you have any questions for Viviana?
So the Centennial Park, is that the splash pad, or they just want the grass space behind it?
Just the grass space behind it.
Okay.
Yeah. The splash pad will be open to the public.
Right. Okay. That's what I was clarifying.
Yeah. But Viviana, as I understand it, at 4 o'clock, there will be little kiosks. And because this is the way CTC does its business at an already existing event, something that's already going on, then they bring Coke. Where people are naturally gathering, they provide a service to the community in these little kiosks. But then after that, they will gather and have a social. But
correct. We're planning to be there before the kickstart of our night or of our gathering to share information. and also have our CTC members be involved in delivering that message, because the more that we can practice that ourselves, the better we can in engaging our neighbors, other community members. So we will be there as coordinators, but we also hope to get the CTC members involved in sharing the message.
Dave, do you have any other concerns?
No, I appreciate that what we're offering in general is services in kind, which is certainly something we can do. I do have a question for parks, and I see Cresta here. When we talk about space for Syracuse Days main stage, I know there's been some discussion that was filling up fast. Is there an available space for this? I don't want to bump somebody who's already registered.
I think she's talking about booth space, right?
Booth space.
There was booth space, and then there was also on your slide main stage.
That was for illumination.
That's for illumination event,
Oh.
separate event.
Separate event.
Okay, I thought that was for the same. Okay. What does that, would that normally be set up anyway, or that's an additional?
As far as I understand, that the stage usually is rented for $900 and per rental fee. So, and I honestly didn't know that they were requesting this for this event, but sorry, there's somebody. Chief? Mayor?
Man, I was in this meeting with Viviana. If I'm understanding correctly what she's asking for, she was asking for the chance during like the Syracuse talent show night or whatever happens on that stage, for the CTC to have a moment maybe in between acts to talk about the Big Brother Big Sisters program.
Right.
So she wasn't actually asking for like to reserve the stage for the purpose of it. It was just kind of like maybe if there's some time in between act changes that's what they would like to be able to do.
Is that what you're?
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you, Chief.
I'm hoping I'm right. Maybe she can answer it now, but.
Could you hear the chief?
Yes, thank you, Chief, for helping there. Yeah, so for Heritage Days, we would like a booth space if available. And then with the chief, he had mentioned that there are events happening on the stage that maybe it would be a possibility to have like a few seconds between presentations to just have people, invite people over to our booths so that they can get the information. And that's specifically for Heritage Days. Now, I know there is a conversation about the stage rental for illumination. If that's also a possibility, we would like for that stage to be rented for CTC so that we can have the performances available on the stage the day of illumination, which would be September 1st. So there's two different requests that involve the stage. One is for Heritage Days and the other one is for illumination.
And in the past, or at least in this event, as far as I understand, it's been budgeted for to pay for that rental, correct? That's as far as what I understood when talking with Curtis Fredericks about it.
Yeah, we have somebody that has offered to pay for the stage rental fee if it's not able to be waived or reduced in price.
All right.
Do you have an estimated number of people that will be attending the illumination event?
That's a great question. I wish I could give you an exact number. Last year it was all virtual because of COVID. And this year we're hoping, and this is just, you know, kind of expectations that we have to at least hit 500 families. That's families, not individuals.
That's the goal, is 500 families.
500 families.
So
we're trying to have
local
Sarah and some of the things performed the evening of illumination and have it in person and then have the fireworks follow.
Right.
And so we are hoping the ask is to have either a waived fee on the stage for illumination or a decreased price. That would save us, because we know that the fireworks have escalated dramatically this year because so many businesses have closed because of all of the cancellations last year.
And that's where I would be curious about the estimated attendance, because if I can make an economic trade for this, I know it's supporting a good cause, but it helps to tell a story if you can say, look, yes, we waived this fee, but we had 1,000 people, 500 families, or some equivalent, coming into the city that were shopping in our restaurants, or stores, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. So it is nice to just look at all of the angles on this. So I guess, what was the advertising going to be for this? Is this just a social media campaign, or will it be news media announcements, or?
We're doing all of the above. We're putting in posters in actually grocery stores and online, city magazine, and multiple cities as well. Not because we want multiple communities that participate in CTC to attend. It's not just Syracuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the purchased ad space in Connections Magazine, is that, I don't know what the cost of that looks like. Is that something that we
If we are a partnership with CTC, then we can,
count as our?
that can help. Yes, that would really.
Yeah. I would definitely.
And just to clarify on the magazine, it would be as needed. It's mostly for promoting the family courses that we have available, and those happen about twice a year in the fall and in the spring. So it would be specifically for the promotion of our evidence-based programs.
And not as much about these events per se.
Right.
I think for this year, because last year we recognized that we didn't utilize all of our sources adequately. We are pushing elimination in some of in most of the city magazines and some city newsletters. So we've coordinated with Corinne, who is our liaison, for elimination for the month of June and July.
And I would strongly support that, recognizing them as a partnership with the city for these events, because I love the magazine, but I also see there's quite a bit of content that's from like outside the city.
True.
And this would be a great way to highlight something we're doing within the city that we sponsor, we support, and it's a great event. So I definitely support that.
Thank you.
Council, can we offer ongoing support to the CTC?
I'm willing to offer what they've asked for at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
This
Is there a
business,
vote we need to take?
I think we probably,
It's pretty much
Yeah,
a request
need
to
a vote.
become a partner
yeah.
with CTC.
yeah, what I need is a motion
So, okay,
for this year.
with that clarification, I don't have a problem with any of the ask at this time.
Mhm.
I just want to know if the vote is to become an ongoing partner, which again, I don't have a problem with, is there an additional ask beyond this?
No, and each one would be individually brought before the council
And
anyway.
I have no issue at all, and I would be happy to be an ongoing partner to this extent.
Could you make that in a
And
motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
So, Mayor, yeah, just to clarify, the request is for all of the events for this year
For this year,
only.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we
for
need
the
that.
in-kind services as listed.
Yes.
And then as ongoing, them to present again at this time of the year what they're going to do next year.
And my apologies on not understanding a few things about the meeting. I was at the doctor's at the meeting time. So.
I don't want to hear excuses.
You have a motion. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Second by Seth. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That was unanimous, Cassie. Brody, this is yours. Flash vote. This was mentioned earlier when we were talking with the chief. Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you, everyone.
If any of you who are listening to this are seeing that we're a little tentative with screens, it's because this is all new to us. And I am doing the easy part. I am just sitting here talking, but I could show you what's going on behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. The staff over here is just running around. So
I think it's great, even if we're just getting used to it.
Yeah.
I think this is a great improvement.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I have had someone say that our broadcast doesn't have audio. Do we know if that's been resolved? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor and Council, you've seen this in your packet. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint, kind of both for your benefit and for the benefit of the public. As we move forward, I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the survey itself, and then why we did this survey. which is important, and then the results. Also in your packet, you'll see there are 3 different copies of the survey, the raw data, split between, so the first one's just all the residents, and then there's one with split between male and female respondents, and then a third one distributed by age groups. So you could kind of see the difference in the responses. So for this particular survey, we had 959 people in the city signed up. 688 participated, with 619 of them being residents of the city. And those are the results that we'll see tonight. Based on that, we needed a sample size of 380 residents in order to get a 5% margin of error. And that's with a 95% confidence interval. So this exceeded that. So they calculated it as a 4% margin of error. So a little bit about why we did this survey. First of all, the city has a strategic operational plan that kind of boils down the city council as the elected officials, their vision for each department, and we kind of boil it down into action items or objectives for us to accomplish. Vision statement 2 for the police department says that the Syracuse Police Department is responsive to crime and other community issues. Statement number 3 says that the police officers are courteous and service-oriented. And we felt a good way to determine how we're accomplishing that is to do a community survey that kind of touches on those items. And then another reason we're doing that, last year was obviously an interesting year in law enforcement. And so we've done some internal review of policies, but also we felt like this was a good time to do this survey based on what was going on last year. So let's get into the questions. It is a short survey. Question 1 had to do with police presence. And the single largest answer on this was that the police presence in the city is about right. 45% of the people felt that that's about right. We did have a statistically significant difference between males and females. About half the males said that we're about right, when only 41% of females felt that we were about right. The second largest answer to the question was, I'd like a little more police presence, at 36%. And then it really dropped off from there. So if you combine the people who would like a lot more presence with those who, assuming they would also be in favor of a little more, that means 43% of the respondents said they would like more police presence. Again, there's a difference between male and female that's notable, with 39% of the males saying they would like more, and 46% of the females saying they would like more police presence. There were only 3% who said they would like to see less police presence. Question 2 was spoken about earlier today about the personal interactions residents have had with our police officers in the last 12 months. 70% of the respondents have not had any. And that usually is a good thing for most people, if you don't have an interaction with a police officer, that's probably a good thing. Not always, but in the day-to-day, everybody's day-to-day life, that typically is. But 29% said yes, they did, and almost all of them said that the officer was professional in their dealings with them. There was only 1% that said they had an interaction and the officer was unprofessional. We did notice in the data, if we were to kind of dig into the data a little bit, that younger populations did have a higher interaction with police officers than the other age groups. And a little bit higher percentage of them, the 30 and under population, said that the officer was unprofessional. Still a very low number, but a little bit higher than the rest of the group. Question 3 asked, in which areas of the city do you feel unsafe? the vast majority of the respondents said that they feel pretty safe pretty much everywhere in the city. They really don't feel unsafe anywhere. There were some higher marks on neighborhoods at night, and also trails were the two next highest, but relatively low, relatively speaking. So some of the notable data points in there: 29% of the younger population, 30 and under, said they don't feel safe in their neighborhood at night, which is significantly higher than the rest of the group. So the younger population feels more unsafe in their neighborhood at night. 13% of the younger population said they don't feel safe in parks, which was a lot higher than the rest of the group. 19%, so looking at differences by gender, 19% of females said they didn't feel safe in the neighborhood at night, which is statistically different from the rest of the group. And 19% of females said they don't feel safe on trails. So that's a higher percentage for females on the trails. And then the last data point, so females, 61%, and the under 30 population, 58%, were less likely to feel safe everywhere. So they would be I guess you would, if you were to drill down, that would be something you would look into. These results obviously aren't definitive, but those are follow-up questions to the survey, is to see, why would, what is it that females and the younger population feel about being a little more unsafe in the city. Okay, question 4 was actually a little bit of a self-reflection question for the respondents and on how they're doing to try to prevent crime and for their own safety. So this question was, which safety precautions do you take routinely? And a lot of people are closing doors, locking doors. Fewer people are using, but still the majority are using home security, outdoor lights, and are safer with their credit card information. Some notable data points, however: females are less likely to utilize home security systems or cameras. Females are less likely to utilize outdoor lighting at home. The younger population under 30 was highest on locking doors and wearing seatbelts, but lowest on all the others. So there's some, this might get into questions of, when we do public education, how can we target that public education to what groups? And then ages 46 to 60 were most vigilant on their outdoor lighting at home. So they were statistically more vigilant on turning the lights on at night. Okay, so question 5 was a question on police effectiveness. It was, where is the police department not effective? And the largest single answer was they seem to be effective in all areas. The two next issues of concern would be property crime and traffic safety, is what we got the most response of, where they feel like we're not as effective. So another data point, the younger population said the PD was not effective in youth safety when the whole group said 1%. So that was definitely significant. And then property crime is a bigger concern for the older population, 61 and over, versus everybody else. So they're more concerned about that. So, this survey, I think on the whole, and I'll go over that on the next slide. I was going to mention here, we had over 130 individual text comments. So, that's the equivalent of 130 comments at the podium here given to you from individuals that you can read and consider. But, all in all, I think the bottom line here on this survey is that Our citizens are very pleased with the Syracuse Police Department. Very high marks on this survey. There's obviously room for us to look into where we can improve, but this is the bottom line. Police presence is good, and the public is happy with it, although they are leaning towards a little more presence. There is some indication that our younger population has less trust, I would say. If we were to try to interpolate this data, the younger population might have a little less trust than the older population. But still, the majority, there's a high level of trust. There's indications that females and our younger population feel a little less safe than the males and the older population. And the survey leads us to, find better questions for follow-up surveys or for efforts that we conduct here in our operations. So that's kind of a little rundown of our survey, and if there's any questions, I can take those.
Okay. Jordan, do you want to lead us out here?
Which one?
Jordan.
Okay. No, I thought this was very educational. I did notice as we were going through, it seems like one of the big complaints was speeding within neighborhood communities. And I think we've all seen that. One thing I do want to say, kudos again to the police department for the high marks on in the majority of the population, and for the areas we have weaknesses or at least could do better. I think this is excellent data, message received, and we are going to look into how we can address some of these situations. So thanks for responding.
Thanks, Jordan. Anyone else like to comment?
If I were to relate just general public comments that I get to what we see here, the only consistency I think that links it is I do still get consistent comments from some people that they would feel safer with more lighting. And when I link that to the data that was just presented to us, if they feel a little less safe in parks, some of our parks are not really well lit at night. I'm not sure that's a problem because they're not open at night. So that's not what we're going for. But, and then some neighborhoods, we still have a few deficiencies with streetlights. So those things maybe are something we could do to help the overall sense of feeling safe outside of what the police do. I think that this reflects that the police do a great job, but certainly that's just one thing they wouldn't be able to control that we could help.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else?
I would say just lastly that we need to highly consider how soon we can look at doing a traffic unit for the police. And that would definitely help that part of the survey. And again, not on the police, that's up to us as council. So, and we know that there's a paramedic problem in between. So we're going to try to do what we can.
I was just going to say, I'd like to look at the survey is very indicative and gives us some good citizen feedback, but I'd like to look at it at kind of some of the crime data and tie those together to see how closely citizen perspective and perception relates to reality, just to make sure. Like you said, the biggest issues were property crime and traffic, and how are we per capita, in regards to traffic rates and major accidents and all that. Do those mirror what we would see in somewhere that's much more dangerous in somebody's perspective, or are they like maybe concerns related to growth and some of the other factors, some growing pains that we're having as a city? And so I think there's definitely some information we can take from here and help inform policy, but I think we have a little more homework maybe to do before we jump to conclusions.
And one thing to add to that, sorry, I'm going again because I want to. One thing to add to that is I do want to encourage anyone listening that there is stuff that you can do to make you safer. Like we had a lot of property crime, and as I talk to the police officers, a majority of what they call break-ins are cars outside of garages with doors unlocked and purses on the front seat. Or not purses, but some type of valuable. I do think there are things that we can be, we don't want to have the police do everything for us. We want to make sure that we are doing things to actively make ourselves feel safer. So put in those LEDs and turn on your porch lights, install motion sensors, lock your car doors. All of these things will help you be safer and create a safer environment for both you and your family. Let's make sure that we're all doing our part to make sure that Syracuse is a safer place to live.
Thank you, Jordan. I don't want to leave you out, Lisa. On a second chance.
I was just thinking how specific our perspective is in how we see things. With women feeling a little less safe, a lot of that has to do with how we feel generally with just our physical abilities. Also, I noticed that the youth, or the younger crowd with, didn't consider that the youth had been protected enough, but they're the ones who are having the young children. And the people with the property were older, and we're the ones who have more property and fewer children. So it's interesting how we are personally impacted by what we perceive as crime or some weaknesses in our system. But I do think that Seth is onto something where we need to recognize or do some comparisons to see if perspective is personal or if it's actually based on what's really going on, and then we can address whatever those holes are.
I don't want to create a blister on your back from all the pats on your back, Garrett, but there are some things that I'm aware of as mayor that maybe the council not so aware of, and I'm sure the public is not. Crimes against children that is done in our department, and that goes on unheralded. Nobody knows, but we know how hard that officer works, and he's worked even overtime to prevent crimes against children. And so there are, the DARE program that all the children love, that's not on this survey anywhere, but those things that endear the police department and protect our children are some of the things that I'm aware of that I think I'd like to share too, that there's more to this picture than just what the survey is. So thank you again. And if you want, I'll pop the blister on your back. Let's go on. Brody, we're going to talk about Utopia.
Sure. Okay, so for this item, I'll go over a little bit of the framework for the issue. I'll ask Steve Marshall, our Administrative Services Director, to fill in any holes if I leave any. We also have representatives from Utopia here if you have any questions. Before you tonight, we have two action items. One is to determine the length of the financing for the project, and we do have a suggested time frame for that. And then the second is the vote to whether to authorize the administration to execute the fiber communications contract. In your packet, you have a copy of the draft, and there were some changes from the memo, and I'll just go through those real quickly, kind of the primary changes. So first of all, the term of the bond in the memo says somewhere between 20 and 27 years. So a 27-year bond is suggested, and it's actually the payment schedule is 25 years. So the first 2 years is the construction of the project where no payment is made because it's assumed you're not receiving any of the revenue from subscriptions. So so the suggestion is a 27-year bond with the 2 years capitalized. The maximum, so the way this works, and you're aware of this, but just for anyone listening, the bond payment, the commitment is an annual amount of $1,250,200. That's a maximum amount. And that would be covered by the subscription fees that come in from customers. In the event that that number is not covered, then the city is backstopping it through a commitment. There's two revenue sources that we're committing in this contract. One is the franchise tax, $625,000, and the other is our sales tax revenue at $625,000. Now, keep in mind that the rating agencies, in order to get a good rate, or I should say a better rate, they like to see the availability for us to cover 1.5 times the annual commitment. And we, of course, can show that through our sales tax and franchise tax. Now, what does that commitment mean? It does not mean that we're making the payments. It means that we commit that those are the sources we will use if we have to bridge the gap, if the revenue isn't there. It's also a loan. So when if we have to backstop that because revenues are not sufficient, it is in the form of a loan to the Utah Infrastructure Agency, and then they have to pay us back. And there's a term, there's a promissory note in there, a draft of it. The total construction amount, bond amount, would be $20,705,000. That's what it would take to get the job done. The commitment is the Utah Infrastructure Agency or Authority? Agency, thanks. Would have 100% of the customers available to hook in within a 2-year time frame. Obviously, if there's something out of their control, weather, material shortages nationwide, things like that, that they can't get the job done, there is some grace allowed for that. But the commitment is that that's there. So with that, I'll kind of turn the time back over to you, Mayor. And
Steve, did you want Steve to intercede anything? No, I covered it. You covered it? Okay. Council, do you have any questions of the applicant for Utopia?
So if the
Which one of you would like to represent the group? Mr. Timmerman?
During the capitalization period, if the infrastructure does not get built out, acts of God, whatever occur and pushes that out, does that then push off the financing until it's 100% built out?
So the financing is solid, like it's going to have a time frame, and that doesn't change. Our ability, your ability to declare us in breach of contract, and for us to remedy that, that's open, obviously. But we have a commitment that we'll build that. That's what we're on the hook for. And historically, it's not been an issue. If you were to look at other projects like West Point, we finished that well ahead of schedule. Clearfield, we're not to the 2-year period yet, but we're ahead of schedule on that. And we forecast having this done before 2 years. That's just the time that we put it in there. There's some buffer in there. We're hoping to be substantially completed about 1.5 years, but we put a little bit of buffer in there. There's always a canal or crossing or some permit or something that might hold up a little pocket here or there.
Thank you. So my question is with regards to subscribers. So we are using the subscribers to pay the payments. Assuming that we get, I believe the take rate was 30%. You needed to sign up. So let's say, for example, we get 60% to sign up. I'm not saying that will happen, but if it does, would we then pay off the bond faster?
No, because there's more debt needed. So the cost of a 60% network is a lot more than a 30% network. In that situation, UIA finances, we go and bond for the additional costs, and that doesn't require any city backstop. And so that, if it was twice that, we're looking at 3,000 or so customers, we'd be looking at several $1 million that UIA would then finance and build and install those additional customers. And then there's additional revenues, which is a good thing. And we use that money to come back to pay off that financing. And we say, hey, great, this is great. This is a good problem to have. But then a bunch of more people sign up. That kind of becomes this revolving fund that we use to finance both additional installations and the expansion of the city. So it's also contemplated that you might build some more homes in the city. UIA takes on all those obligations. Many years down the road, if UIA finds itself that like, hey, we're taking care of all of these projects, we have obviously these in lots and lots of cities and lots of other things we do with schools and other partnerships. We find ourselves in a position where we're like, hey, there's actually some profit here. That's kind of a situation to look at all of our debts and all of our projects. And we hope to have the conversation with all of the cities to say, what do we do? Do we lower rates? Do we pay off bonds early? That's probably some combination of those things. But that's a decision that's made among lots of cities across the partnership of UIA.
I guess what I'm hearing though is you're going to use the additional subscribers to pay off existing debt, but not necessarily our debt.
I would say that's accurate in the sense, not necessarily, right? Like we're doing this structure under kind of a worst case scenario. We're saying, and that's the way we have to for securing financing. We actually hope that we pay this off early. We hope that we're in a position of lowering rates. There's a lot of things that we want to do, but that doesn't make a project happen. We go in this and you should assume this is a 27-year contract with a 25-year payment exposure based on a take rate and a revenue. And you say if things are all much better than that, that's a decision that's made, among UIA across a lot of the projects we have across many cities.
We wouldn't get a vote on that because we're not one of the founding cities.
That's true, but we do commit, you're not going to have a different price structure than other cities, right? We're not going to say, hey, you got a really high take rate, or maybe you have a low take rate and we have higher take rate somewhere else, that they would get the benefit over you or vice versa. We do these projects, we get a lot of benefit from the economy of scale of the partnership. So you're likely to benefit a lot more from that partnership than any sort of individual effort. And also a significant part of our project has revenues from non-fiber to the home partnerships. And so when we look at this, a kind of high take rate in Syracuse is not significant when it comes to a potential revenue upside and ability to pay off bonds. That comes in the form of business revenues and other strategic partnerships. Fiber to the home projects are modeled just like this, kind of a break-even scenario. There's not going to be a lot of upside coming off of this for us as an organization, but it's a partnership that we both benefit from, just from the economy of scale and expanding things out.
I would just like to see an architecture where there's some of we're doing cost sharing, whereas we're guaranteeing the debt, but if we start paying off more because we have a lot of subscribers, I know you guys have to put in more fiber, but you're doing that anyway. I'd like to see some investigation into if cities are adding more subscribers and are overpaying their bond amount, that it should, at a minimum, be architected in such a way that that city gets some reduction in their bond rate because they are putting so much into it.
Yeah, the likely scenario is that for many years, UIA will be underwater on this project. I mean, I know you say, hey, it's great to have more take rate and all of that, but the reality is we would go hit that take rate and it breaks even. And then we have that other couple thousand customers, and you have this cycle. And actually, we're happy to do that. That's what we do. We finance these projects. We build them. We service customers. We'll get revenues. Those eventually pay back. But it's not, we don't see this as some opportunity to make lots of money off of the city, or, it's just, this is the structure of the right balance between this city benefiting from lots of, hundreds of millions of previous investment in fiber networks and infrastructure across the state. You're not having to buy any of that. You're not having to take on any risk or anything that's been done previously. You're asked to kind of come in at this level just for the incremental risk of building to that break-even scenario. But then you're not also being asked for anything on the tail end of that. We're saying, we'll take care of that. We'll finance that. We'll address those customers, those costs, those expansions that may be needed in the city without any city risk. So we see this as a mutual risk thing, right? I know you're saying, hey, we're taking on the risk. Believe me, we're taking on a lot more risk. But there's this incremental phase that you are being asked to take on the risk.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, council?
Yeah, I noticed in the documents that it commits the city to have available for it some land for sub-hubs. And there's been no talk of that so far. So what are we really talking about committing? I mean, what size of land do we need in 6 locations in the city? Do we have that already, or is that something that we need to now acquire? I'm just trying to understand very clearly what would be a part of this whole acceptance.
So we've proposed locations for those. They would be the sites for really the only thing that you're going to see in this network when it's done. Everything else is subsurface and boxes, but there will be 6 fiber huts that are 10 by 12 walk-in shelters with air conditioners and a generator. We'll try to find a place out of the way where maybe there's other buildings and things like at a park, by bathrooms or some other structure where it's not going to be in the way. And so I don't know if we've nailed down exactly where those are going to be, other than that we've proposed one in each of these footprints at a park. Those could be moved, those aren't set in stone. And so we would the reason it's in the contract is that's our longest lead item for the completion of the network. So we want to light a fire a little bit under the city to know that we really need some cooperation to nail those down so we can get those installed, get the power and gas hookups to those. There's a gas hookup for the generator. So if there's a power outage, they can run indefinitely. But I don't know, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, so on these maps here that are in the packet, the little triangle there, they're typically identified in parks. It's I can't remember the size of the hut, Roger. It was like a 12 by 15 or
so it's 10 by 12,
10.
but it needs more space than that. The easement will need to have, I can't remember how many feet, but probably 5 feet or so around that space, maybe more on one end for the generator.
And these are the locations they've identified and suggested. It does not have to be at that location. If we have land somewhere else that's in that general area, then.
As we pick up these spots, you're basically looking at, the size of a new bathroom in a park. But what does that do to maintenance and our parks crew? Do they have any special requirements to take care of these? You just mentioned that it has to be air conditioned. So does that mean we have to be protective of inlets? And I'm just trying to get the full picture of what we're changing.
So we take care of the facility, and if there's any damage, even if it's vandalism or something like that, that's on us to maintain those.
Okay.
Generators, power, air conditioners, all that stuff. We take care of all the facility. Really, the city just
moves around it.
Grants permission for the ground.
Do you have concerns about sprinklers around that? Just
they're waterproof.
Follow on. Well, I'm just saying, like, what are these huts constructed out of? I mean, if it's wood and is it painted? Does it need to be up? And what's the upkeep on them?
Yeah, so
eyesore.
This says they're made of fiber. No, sorry.
Are they farmhouse?
So they have, it's almost like a pebble in epoxy coating on them. So it looks kind of like a sand.
Like an in and out trash can.
Rock. Like what?
Like an in and out trash can. Aren't those like the fiber?
Are they like that? They might be. I don't like in and out. There's better burgers out there. Yeah, we don't like to compare to a garbage can. If you were to see a cell tower or something like that, you'll see these little buildings at the base of those. They look like those, but they're smaller. So if you just think 10 by 12, that's a pretty small one. I mean, it's not going to be the size of a bathroom facility or something like that. It's just enough space to walk in and have a couple of racks of equipment. So they're much less intrusive than the typical telecommunications facility like that. Fortunately, fiber and technology around how that all works has gotten much smaller over the years. The ones we used to do were 20 feet by 15, but these are pretty small.
But what I'm hearing from staff is that we have this already, so it would be no new land acquisition or easements that we have to acquire.
And we would get says on where they go in and
so
maybe
see
not in
that
a park as opposed to behind a building
Not
or
terribly
something.
attractive.
Yeah, I mean, it looks just like those except smaller. So that one that you've got in focus, if you were to chop that into a third.
So it's kind of like a trailer.
I don't know if they'll meet our architectural standards, Noah.
You break up the roof.
I would like this to be a farmhouse look, if we can.
He has no idea if we're serious or not.
So I don't want to complicate it, but we have done some special accommodation on these. I think in Orem, we put a brick surface on it because it matched the buildings next to it. I think more often than not, when we do a special surface on it, we get more complaints because it stands out a little bit more. You know, that kind of brown, rocky texture is pretty bland, so it doesn't attract a lot of attention.
And that's typically what you see on the the cell towers we have in the city, the cabinets that are underneath there, that's what they're made of as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're very durable. I mean, you can have sprinklers spraying on them all the time. They're fine.
Excellent.
I'm okay with this. The big thing I want to do is make sure that we are very careful about the placement of these, and wherever possible, put them in a place that perhaps isn't a park. Like if we have like near the Public Works building or somewhere that's kind of out of the public eye and things like that. Just look at some opportunities to not take up our sparse parkland and try and put them in places that are.
On that note, we have odd pieces of property in weird places because people just kind of, it served no real value. I would first look there, then look at a public park space. You know, if we had one of these little land oddities that is like flipped over by a developer because they couldn't fit anything on it, or, you know, I would look for that first.
Yeah, we were thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Dave, thanks for bringing that up. We've talked finances, we've talked about buildings. Anything else that we need to talk about?
So on the budgeting side of things, so did I understand the agreement right? I'm sure I didn't, but I'd like some clarification on the placeholder on the franchise and the sales tax. So what does that do to our budgeting powers? I mean, do we just have to wait till the March and September estimates come in, and then we release the funds, or how does that work?
So as far as budgeting, we don't necessarily have to place those monies in any location. We do have to realize though that if we bond for something else in the future, those revenues are already accounted for, so we can't pledge them twice.
Right. So even though they're not like line itemed, that they are committed.
Yeah, even though we're not actually spending it on this project each year.
But it does affect our ability to bond.
Yeah, if we bond on something
For
else.
27 years?
Not necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
27 years.
Except for the fact that our bond rate, it's not necessarily based on that factor, except for the fact it's more our ability to pay. That's more. Like the bank isn't going to say, oh, you have another bond, because technically it's not under us. Correct? The bond itself?
I think it's the opposite.
I think they will recognize it as
It is our bond.
it is something we're ultimately
Okay, 'cause that's
responsible for.
different than
It's
what
like co-signing on a loan with your
conversation.
child.
So
I
you're
had
not
there.
paying anything and it's not city debt. It's a UIA bond, but it's like you have a contractual obligation, right?
Cover it.
But that contractual obligation
Okay.
has
It's like a coast.
points
It
at
is a co-signer.
guaranteed.
Okay,
It's
so that's
co-signing
kind of
with
different
our
understanding. So I appreciate the clarification, Seth. Thank you.
And keep in mind, the pledge that's been identified, which we think is preferable, is it's a mix, right? We have franchise revenues because cities usually never use that for anything. I mean, from a bonding perspective. And then it does dip in and have a portion of the sales tax, but it's a small portion of that. That's a much larger revenue source than your franchise tax revenues. So you still have a lot of headroom. So, I mean, if I were you, I'd be asking, and maybe I should ask this on your behalf, you know, do you have other plans for bonding and other sources of revenue that could be used so you don't feel like this is preventing you from doing other projects you would want to do?
Like a 50-acre park.
Yeah, so your other revenue sources for bonding, typically on a large project like that, like the park bond, that would come out of your property tax, and there'd be a special property tax levy. So it wouldn't even touch these revenues at all.
Okay.
You know, you can bond for other things, and we have the other item we've discussed recently is a fire station, and that would be.
Affect that.
And that can come either out of, you know, it could be a GO bond out of property tax, or you could commit sales tax to that too.
I do have just one comment to make. I reached out to George McEwen, who is on the Utopia UAA board and a friend of mine. And he said, quote, there's a new era of teleworking communities as a new normal. Utopia has a better story than definitely in the past. said, and he suggested that we look at maybe ARP monies to help fund it. Just as a thought in rolling on with the funding. I don't know what our appetite is for any of that, but.
For what? ARP?
So
As in like the federal dollars.
American Rescue Plan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, we've been talking to a lot of cities about potential use of that in a really rural area where it's like, hey, to make this thing pencil, you may need to have 50 or 60% take rate, and that's a pretty high target. I think that's a really good use of that funding to bring the risk levels down. In this city where if we assumed only residential customers, we're still just below 30% take rate. With some assumptions in the blend, we're pushing below. This is an extremely low risk point. I think your ARP money is spent better somewhere else, to be honest. I mean, if you felt like that was still a really high risk, you said, hey, let's bring that down from 30%, shorter, you could do that. But again, you'd be then spending that money up front. Whereas we think that the likelihood of having that 30% of the customers paying this system off for you, or for us, all of us, is really high. So why not take advantage of that and use that money somewhere else?
Leveraging the long-term longitudinal subscriptions over one-time dollars that we can invest in whatever we want to or need to now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually the last person to turn down a subsidy, but it really isn't needed in this case. You've got the demand, just the economics of this project. You've got lower construction costs because your soil conditions are good. The fiber that's already been invested in the ground. There's just a lot of things that make this especially low risk. And my personal opinion is it doesn't need the subsidy.
Yeah. Council, you ready to act on this?
Well, I just want to, for the record, I want to make one explanation, and that is, in the past, I've been very concerned about engaging government in this, because I feel like fundamentally government should take as small a role in private business as possible. However, the landscape has changed, and my concern now has shifted a little bit from whether government should take any part to, if government doesn't take part, our city could be without a service that all the surrounding cities have, and that would be access to fiber service. And that makes our citizens less competitive. So there's been a bit of a shift there for me, and I just want to make that explanation publicly, that where I once felt like, lots of cities didn't have this, it was up to the private sector, it wasn't really our responsibility. Now I'm starting to say, gee, if everybody around you has a better opportunity to work in this teleworking dominant market, and you don't have that here, maybe we're depriving our citizens of something. So it's a bit of a shift. I wanted to make that explanation public.
Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Dave.
The only other thing I would add is, for any of those that don't understand, what this is just laying the fiber. The actual providers are not the government.
No. And it's still open competition.
Yes, there's still open competition. I want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
That this is not the government controlling the internet. This is the government putting fiber in the ground and allowing more companies to enter Syracuse to provide a service to our citizens.
Because without that, we really do have two primary providers that most people rely on, and many people have expressed unhappiness with. So this actually allows for more competitors to everyone, which when we have more competition in business, you generally have to separate yourself by providing something better, whether it's pricing or service. So I welcome more choices in the city.
Yep.
Anything else?
No,
That's it.
Exactly. I agree with all those comments.
I'm looking for a motion. Now, the motion, do we need to separate the direction of the administration with the contract itself?
It can be just in the motion.
Could we just do them on both?
Yeah, with the term.
With the term.
Or are we just saying the recommended staff recommendation is 27 years?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make that.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize administration to execute a fiber communications acquisition contract with the Utah Infrastructure Agency as outlined in our previous discussion
right,
and in the packet.
thank you.
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Dave and Jordan, I want to thank you too. You guys are the most well informed about this. Thank you for your participation. It's been great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Cassie, let's talk about an election.
Okay, yeah, the action that's before you tonight is just to approve the polling location and vote centers for the upcoming municipal election. You'll notice on the spreadsheet that I sent you that the county has actually designated the new library as Syracuse City's voting center on election day. They just wanted to move away from the community center so they're not interrupting programming that is occurring there. And with the expansion of the library, it can now handle the demand on election day. Approving the other list of vote centers allows Syracuse residents to visit any other vote center in Davis County to cast their ballot on election day if they don't have the ability to come to the library. So I just ask for action on this list that's presented to you tonight.
I want to clarify where the county has made this change to the library, and I'm not necessarily against this, but do we have any say in that?
As far as just a thought with that, I wondered why they had as well, but it seems that at every location in Davis County that has a library, every community, they've moved it to that location.
I'm not necessarily objecting. My curiosity is, let's say that they said they were going to move it to a place that we all saw a clear and present problem. Do we even have a say? Because it's their...
No, yeah, because it is still our election. So if you have a concern about the city's vote center.
We would have that ability.
Yeah.
I actually think I'm for this because it doesn't shut down the community center, which you mentioned, which has every election day. So I'm okay with this. And
Parking lot will still be a little packed.
Will this be temporary only because of COVID being at the library, or will they expect it to return?
Yeah, no, I think they plan to use the library going
From
forward for the vote center in Syracuse.
It's got plenty of exits and
Oh, no, I have no problem with it. I'm just wondered what the future
I
held.
just was curious of what our options were, but I have no problem. So I'd make a motion that we accept this.
All right.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The motion from Dave, the first, the second from Jordan. Lisa, do you have any discussion?
No.
Yeah. Anyone else have any discussion items? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? No, proposed ordinance 2021-9, amending the Syracuse zoning map related to property at 1000 West and 1900 South.
Hey guys, this project is called Antelope's Edge. We've talked about it before. Like the mayor said, it's a rezone from A1 to PRD, 1000 West, 1900 South. It's 24 units of single family homes. It's about 8 units per acre. It'll all be 2 stories. They have multiple amenities, pickleball, basketball, this other one that I can never remember the name of, bocce ball or something. We've got a development agreement in the packet that goes along with it. The only changes since last time, if you remember, we discussed the concern that the pickleball is too close to the driveway, and he since resubmitted an adjustment and also some plans for some like nets and stuff. But yeah. The applicant's here.
Question, in the packet, it has pool fence. There's not a pool in this, right? Okay, is that just an example of fencing? Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Just
it's just,
clarifying.
it can be used in other places besides around a pool.
I kind of figured, but thank you.
Corinne, do you have more that you'd like to question?
No, I'm done. Thanks.
How far back did you
Sorry,
go?
Mayor, I didn't defer to you to begin with. My
Oh, you're
apologies.
fine.
Sorry.
It's just good to be here. Yeah. Any other discussion on this item?
I was just saying, how far back did the amenities move?
I want to say like 5 feet, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6, but we're close.
Okay.
I think it was kind of like a standard service area.
Okay,
Yeah, as long as people aren't standing in the street, that's safer.
it's awesome.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Now, the packet doesn't reflect that move, correct?
It does.
It does, because the service line of pickleball was the street.
Like even with.
It still
Yeah.
is on
And it's
the packet I
changed.
have.
You're seeing, if you look at the squares, you're seeing it.
But I'm okay with it as long as that's understood that all of that has taken place. I just wanted to make sure that we understood that what was in the packet, there is one of the images that still shows the pickleball boundary at the road. But I know the change has been made. I just wanted to make that clarification that,
I think the colored one is dated, that black and white actual landscape.
okay,
That's
it was
probably
the
what
colored
happened.
one that was incorrect. So, okay, perfect.
I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we change the zoning of said parcel since of approximately 1900 south, 1000 west from A1 to PRD.
Thank you, Corinne. Second?
Second?
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Let's go to number 12.
Yeah, this next item is also for Antelope's Edge. It's kind of its accompanying subdivision plat.
Yeah.
So same address, same number of units, everything. Since it's PRD, it requires the rezone and preliminary plat to happen at the same time.
Do we need to discuss this, council, or we can move on?
Didn't we? Okay.
We just did a rezone, so we're doing the plat, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So we need a second vote? So what-
Yep.
Yeah, we need
It's a
second.
separate application
Separate
technically, but
application.
it's for the same project.
So Mayor, I'll make
Yes.
the motion to accept the preliminary plat for Antelope's Edge at 1900 South, 1000 West, approximately from A1 to PRD.
Okay. Lisa, you want to second that?
Second.
See, now we did it exactly the same. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hope you appreciate the comedy relief. Noah.
All right, item number 13. This is for a project that we discussed in a previous meeting called Abington. This is also a rezone, A1 to MXD. Address is 1550 West, 300 South. The proposed plan includes 127 units of townhomes, 3 and 2 stories. That comes out to be about 11, I believe 14 units per acre on 9 acres, a little bit under 14 units. Amenities include tot lot, pavilions, benches, some pet cleanup stations, and like a little walking trail around a detention basin. It includes about 4,800 square feet of commercial on 12 units. So since last time, the things that have changed include they added one more commercial building, increasing the commercial amount so that all of the buildings facing 300 South have a first floor commercial. They added more parking, so they widened they're all the townhomes are just single car garage, but on the end units, they widened those driveways to be 2 wide, so that'll increase some parking. They added some crosswalks across 1550 West, but that would also, should this be approved, it would require additional input from Public Works and the city, since that's a city road, but they are willing to participate in helping make sure those crosswalks work. They also provided a traffic memo. Their study shows that their proposed development would add about 1,156 trips. And then they compared that with another use of medical office, like a dental office, would be 3,530. This is according to it's a engineer's manual that is kind of standard practice to look up these numbers in. I don't believe that they've completed a in-depth traffic study, but
they've looked at the numbers of trips that the uses would generate. Also new was a draft development agreement in the packet, which would be approved concurrently with the rezone, assuming you wanted to do that. The applicants are in the audience, and I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Thanks. Let me just intercede too. As you remember, council, we spoke about this just 2 weeks ago. In the meantime, you guys have done some homework on your own. Derek, do you want to represent your group, or both of you come up, whatever you'd like to do? And I was wondering if I could have Derek, if you could just recount to them what you have done in the last 2 weeks. And then, council, this is a discussion only. We will not be acting on this evening. We will act on this in our business meeting in June. But what we've asked Derek to do is to come back and report to you. You know that he has met with you singly or in pairs, but you've not heard what has been said because of the open public meetings. Maybe you could share your feelings at the end of this. So, Derek, tell us what you've done with the residents and with the school.
Yeah, so Derek Terry, Kaysville, just formality there. Yeah, so based on our meetings and the things that Noah said, we went back out of the crosswalks. We did that, talked to the engineers, talked to them about, this was something that the residents, that HOA letter, they wanted to see the traffic counts. So we got that, and then she emailed me subsequently asking, what traffic counts do we get? And I said that we did what would be if it was residential, and what would it be if it was general commercial, and what it would be if it was medical office, dental. And Noah gave those counts about 3 times the amount of traffic for those other 2 uses. And I relayed that back to her as well. I also talked to the person at the school. And again, the 2 concerns of both those parties were only the traffic and, the safety of the students and the residents. And we, are committed, and it told them both we're committed to addressing both those issues with the crosswalks, with signage, with whatever the city wants to do, that we will facilitate calming the traffic in that area to improve safety. Other thing we did since our meeting, as Noah mentioned, we added that 3rd mixed use building to make it all commercial on the 1st floor along the road to the north. We put together a hospital site plan to kind of show what a possible future use would be over on the land to the west of us. And again, as Noah stated, we added more parking to those units so they can park more cars in the driveway, thus alleviating some of the concerns of parking on the street, which again, we're happy to participate with the city on how we want to keep people from parking on the street for the school.
Thank you.
And that was, the conversations basically that we had with all the council members, but I'll let you guys.
Let me begin then with Jordan, and have each of you maybe express in your meeting with Derek what your feelings are and what you expressed there and where you are today in relationship to this. Let's start with you, Jordan.
All right, so my biggest concern is we don't know what the rest of this looks like. I would ask Noah, can you tell me what is immediately adjacent on the west side?
Immediately adjacent to the west side is a giant field.
Okay.
And we all know, and I think almost everybody in Syracuse at this point has heard about a large medical facility.
Right. So
but we don't have application and we don't know anything.
Right. So that's why I've always said we need to really be careful not building things piecemeal. If, for example, the entire west side is a parking lot, I would almost say that's an ideal place for some of this commercial. Maybe the commercial would be better located over there with turned around and now servicing this potential facility. I just struggle to buy off on a plan that doesn't account for what's around it. Now, this is no fault of yours. I get this, and it puts everyone involved in kind of a rough spot. And that's why I originally pushed to table this, because we are hoping to see something in the not too distant future. And I've said this time and time again, I don't feel compelled as a city council member to fill up Syracuse during my term in office. And so I feel like we have some time here to see how at least the surrounding area starts to take shape. My concern is once we do this, we are locking in that entire west side that could be fantastic office space that could service a future facility into residential. Now, we know that we do need some transitional zoning, and I understand the planning part of that. But I think that west side is still an opportunity that we may miss if we jump on this without understanding what is going in around it. So that was my concern that we expressed in the meeting as well. I have not seen this site plan. I looked through the packet a couple of times. I don't think that was included in the packet.
I can speak to that. So we talked about having them put some work into that. Since then, the
other person,
the large user, but not. Oh my gosh! Sorry, Dad. Can't talk right now.
We can see. That's cute.
The joys of using a iPhone linked with your iPad, right? Oh, it kicked out the broadcasting. We weren't really looking at that anyway, right?
Anyway, sorry.
All right, I feel like you've been distracted.
I've been distracted. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it off of there.
But what you're so to put words in your mouth, you didn't include it in there because it's not concrete, it's conjecture, and we don't really know what it's going to look like.
Well, they did put forth a pretty big effort in trying to meet what the council's concerns were in not knowing what is next door, and they hired an engineer to look at it, and they provided those. But the people who are under contract to buy the land actually reached out to me and said, please do not share, which I could understand. I mean, they're just concerned about
I understand that as
there
well.
to be a concept plan out there that might,
sure,
give people a certain impression of how they intend to develop. And
But
they're so early on, they don't even know exactly how.
Within a year, we may know that.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's worth anything, they did just kind of study it out using those stub roads, and they do have the knowledge that's informing their design decisions. It's just been requested by the people who are under contract to not share it in a public meeting right now.
And I understand that, but it'd be nice if we could see that.
Is that something that we can see outside of a public meeting and discussion with?
They would have to get permission to stay up. They've all signed this.
I can email it to you. I mean, it's something we created. You can draw roads on anything you want, and I can send it to you.
It's his intellectual, or somebody's intellectual property that can be shared, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it's conjecture.
Yeah, and they don't control the asset as they.
But I think it is good to know his point that they are planning around with just their piece and not, they're not conjecturing onto us, and we're not onto them either. So,
Council, I'm going to call the discussion on this one with what
George got to speak.
You got to speak.
No, I'm saying I'm the only one.
Well, we're not, but I'm going to shut you up.
Oh, okay. I can get on.
Because what my intent is not to have any decision made tonight, nor any straw poll. I want to hear from the council what you say, and then we're going to table this until the 1st of June.
Thank you.
Lisa, you're next.
Okay. So
and I'll shut you up if you go too long.
So I'll be quick. My thoughts that after the discussion in the meeting is it's still to me a good transition to have housing around that area. To go from single family no matter what that area ends up being, that's transitional housing in my opinion, and that's a very reasonable
transitional
place
zoning
for
instead
it.
of transitional housing.
Transition, we'll just call it a segue. How about that? And I'm not concerned about whether the commercial involved in this mixed use would be along 193 or if it would go north-south. I think that there are several ways that it could go, and that doesn't have anything to in my opinion, to do with piecemealing. That says to me that there are several areas that it could go, and it would just depend on whoever's doing the developing as to how effective that will be. It wouldn't cut off any, it'd be one thing if we were bringing it clear far west or surrounding it with houses and it would be in the middle of something, but it wouldn't. It would be on a perimeter, no matter what. So, so I don't have a problem with that. And I know that we discussed that there would be a lot of aging buildings at the same time, but that can be said of anything. Anytime there's development, you have things being built at the same time. We had a big crush of building that was done several years ago, a bunch of houses and businesses done at the same time, and that has to do with maintenance. That doesn't that isn't a deterrent to me either. But I can understand Jordan's issues and that he wants to see a more complete picture, but I don't think that that can be your burden, because you're not asking about 50 acres, you're asking about 9 to 10. So I don't think that that should be your burden to bear, to figure out what's going to come to pass over the next several years. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, David?
Well, I think that I expressed privately that one of my main concerns is with all mixed use developments is there a significant component that is the mix that is worthy of the trade-off. And for me, if we don't have more business space than the bare minimum, then I'm concerned, because, and not to say that when it's the bare minimum, to me, it represents that it was a token thrown into the project to get the higher density. I'm not interested in granting that. I'm interested in providing the component of commercial that I feel like our city needs. So that can't be underrepresented. And that was what I expressed. It's still a concern of mine. That could go either way when I start to look at what's around it, but we don't know that at this moment. At least I don't. And so that's the way that's shaped for me. But I just feel like there's a better use when we start to understand what the business needs are of the city, because that was the whole purpose for me in agreeing to the zone, was that we would gain commercial applications.
Thank you, David. Seth?
So I think in our discussions, we talked about traffic and some of those major concerns. And I think it's really important that we get in front of that and understand what that looks like. And so I appreciate that. I do get concerned when we talk about the commercial components, that we don't, build just to, again, appease. The other side of that would be that we build and create vacant space. And so I really want to have quality commercial components that are included. And so I worry that if we try to squeeze more, I think, Noah, as we talked about how we've come to some equilibrium with the zone, it's about trying to squeeze anything we can out of it that the market demands. And so I appreciate you guys adding the additional space. I think also when we talk about, what might be a higher use, we talked about that a little bit last time we met. And when we talk about the higher use, that would then put in some negative ramifications on the community. And so we're talking about adding a higher commercial component or making it a completely retail or completely commercial project in that area, if that was a higher or better use. And then you would have our citizens who we're trying to be responsive to and support coming out, and rightfully so. They would probably be beating our doors down with the understanding that that also would have a heavy impact on their community. And so I guess what I'm saying is that, this is a tough decision, and, no matter what we do, it's going to either, impact our citizens or, impact us financially. And there's so often that our citizens do kind of reach out to us and say, you're just doing this to line the coffers of the city. And I don't want to, do that. So.
Thanks, Seth. Corinne?
My main concern that I expressed in meeting with these gentlemen was that we keep up with staff, and particularly police and fire. And as we add more people, and we've just voted on several of these, and I've been watching what our commitment levels have been to hiring in response to those, because it is a legitimate part of that is, okay, what is this impact going to be in total? And these gentlemen were willing to look into that and figured out that with approximately 381 people in these facilities, it'd be 0.24 firemen and 0.32 police officers. So with that, it's something to consider with the other projects that we've also approved. Are we willing to keep up with the staff needed in police and fire, and also frankly generalized staff here that you guys, as more citizens frequent the city offices and so forth, are we willing to keep up with that? So that was my concern that I expressed.
Okay. Now, Council, what I'm doing is I'm going to call the discussion here, and we'll.
Can I make a few comments?
Yes.
So just to address, going back, so the two letters that came in, one from the school, one from the residents, both those were not opposed to the project. Their concerns were traffic and safety going through there. And we felt like with the traffic study, it showed that the traffic count would be about triple with a commercial use or with a medical office use. And we felt like with the crosswalks and things we want to do with the residential could provide traffic calming there. So we feel like this could be a solution to the problems of the current, the residents in the area have brought up. And in terms of the increased staff level with the report that Noah showed, yes, it does. I mean, with all things, any new house, you're going to show an incremental increase in staff, but also it brings, the tax revenue to then pay for those services so you can hire and grow as a city. So those are the two things I want to address.
Thank you. Cassie, do we have anybody in the Zoom meeting from the residents or from the school that would like to talk to us?
I am a resident in Monterey Estates. This is Emily Finau. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I wanted to say that I appreciate the communication that I've had. Derek reach out to me, the mayor also, about the concerns, the safety and traffic concerns. And as from what I've heard, that the crosswalks so far, aside from the widened driveways, are the only one of the ideas that's been brought up tonight that we discussed, or that I put forth in the letter that I wrote last week. There were a number of other safety measures that we suggested to implement. I would, if this is approved, would like to hear if those other safety measures would be implemented as well. I also had a thought of the Stillwater development in Syracuse. They have an overflow parking area across the street from their development. And so I also wondered about if it would be possible to look into that detention area on the 1500 or the 1550 property. There's a detention area there on the south part. Wondered, in addition, if we could take a look at that for additional parking as well, if this is approved. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak, so my thoughts are a little bit scattered as I'm trying to gather my thoughts. But so those are the two things that come to mind right now. Are those other safety measures willing to be implemented? And could we look at maybe that detention area as additional parking?
Thank you, Emily. Is there anybody from the school?
I don't see anyone else raising their hand or unmuting.
All
at this
right.
point.
Let's do this. There is precedent. You'll remember, Council, that back we had some issues with parking and traffic safety associated with the high school about 18 months ago. And we brought together a coalition from the school and from the residents to meet with staff. And we heard what their recommendations were. We worked at them, looked to see what the city could do to make those recommendations work. Brody, what I'd like to suggest is maybe between now and our meeting in June, that we bring, if Emily is willing to do that, there was another resident that was the head, led that coalition 18 months ago. came in, and then Principal Jefferson Johansson from the high school came. So maybe we could get a representative from the school. And if Emily, if you'd be willing to work with staff in this coalition, let's see what we can iron out in the way of, let's see what we can do in the retention basin and see what the city can do outside of what these gentlemen are proposing with crosswalks and things. But maybe hawk signals, maybe there's something that the city can be involved in to help too.
And to go along with that point, he also has stubbed in the road that they were talking about.
Yes, yes. So, and maybe one of you in that meeting.
Yeah.
That we could.
And like we said, I've spoken with Emily multiple times. We are on board with increasing safety. We will pay for it. This, it's something the city has to approve and wants, but we are happy to pay for it too. Because we want safety for them. We want safety for our future residents.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
I think it would be good too for a group of residents to kind of understand some of the limitations that we have with national standards. Sometimes sometimes we get citizen groups at no fault of their own who see things in one application and wonder why it wouldn't apply elsewhere, but that they're not aware that there are national standards that have to be included for that to work. And because we're bound by those national standards, it helps to give them a chance to hear them. We don't always get a chance to talk about them this week.
And there are cautions with regards to crosswalks. A crosswalk does not mean a safe place to cross necessarily.
Yeah.
That paint does little to protect someone, so we need to make sure it's very well planned and coordinated in such a way that there's good visibility. Otherwise, as we know, we've had a fatality on a crosswalk in the city.
And you can't have crosswalks too close together, or cars, they can't get past. You can't, because it's like start, stop. And so it creates actually a more unsafe area. So those things like that are nice to be able to express that thinking that you're putting more over an area might logically make sense, but you have to understand how the car interacts with that, and you're actually maybe making it more dangerous.
Right, and we've agreed through the development agreement to provide a full-blown traffic study to where they, do the traffic council, look at everything and figure out where really is the best place to do these calming features.
Okay, Brody, by way of assignment, then would you determine who from staff ought to be in that meeting? Sure. And then either or both of you will let you know when that is. Is there a member of the council that would like to be part of that?
Well, I'm the representative to SAA, so I would.
Would you be willing to
do that?
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes.
Could I speak? Yes. I wanted just to remind the council too that we have an adopted traffic calming program, and on the vein of what Councilmember Savage was talking about. You don't just want to throw in a speed bump. Right. You got to study them out. You got to make sure that, like Dave was saying, that there's national standards, and Public Works Department, they're obviously up to speed on all of the engineering standards. And, we already have kind of this program and venue of acceptable traffic calming solutions and things like that can be looked at.
Okay. Thank you, Dave, for accepting that. Emily, are you okay to represent the residents?
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll be in touch. And Dave, is your business a little more stable now? I know it was a tough time for you, but
I'm more flexible.
You're more flexible now. Okay.
Mayor,
right. Yes.
Just reporting. We've had some input from a viewer online. It's a little hard to hear some council members if they don't speak into the microphone.
Okay.
So just a reminder.
All
Thanks.
right.
I'm going to double up here.
Okay.
I'll get closer. I know I speak very quietly.
And so, Mayor, just so I'm clear, so the plan now is to put on the agenda the first meeting in June for a vote.
In the meantime, we're going to meet offline.
Will we be able to vote in the June meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It will be up for action item. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to item 15.
Thank you.
Brody, is this you? Or Robert? Is Robert? Hi, Robert. Good to see you.
Hello, Council.
Hello.
So I'd like to just update you on the West Davis Corridor project. So Farmington Bay Constructors was hired by UDOT to do construction on the West Davis Corridor. So As you may have already seen, construction is in the beginning stages now. They're starting to haul fence off areas and do some utility locating and camera, video underground lines, and bring in fill for bridge embankments. So work's in the beginning stages. We know that there are some impacts on our city's infrastructure. Anything that UDOT will be impacting, they are covering the cost for. UDOT is giving Syracuse the opportunity, well, and other cities along inside the project area, the ability to upgrade our own infrastructure that may be inside the project area if we choose to do so. And if so, it would be considered a infrastructure betterment. So we do have some old infrastructure that's been in place for many years, as Antelope is the backbone of our system. So we do have an opportunity to upgrade some of that old infrastructure underneath Antelope Drive while they're opening up the road and doing construction, and allowing us to upgrade with new pipe materials or pipe sizes and new locations. We're looking at locations that are not going to be underneath the pavement, but more just outside the pavement if we ever have to in the future maintain with manholes, valves, or anything else, excavations. We won't have to do it underneath this section of Antelope Drive that they're going to be working in. Other than there's just a little bit of a sewer line that's there that they are unable to, we're getting that mostly out of the way, and they're covering that cost. But so I come to you with update on this utility betterment agreement. We've been in discussion with UDOT. They gave us a proposal of $3.9 million for all of the utilities that we would consider a betterment that UDOT wouldn't necessarily need to change out, but we would choose to change out. It was one of the first draft that we received for costs was $3.9 million, and that's what I had showed to you I think about a month ago. We went back to them as council advised to say that their costs were higher than what we expected, and we decided to not do the section of Bluff Road because of the high costs. And they responded saying they really need Bluff Road done because of drainage. So they decided they would cover the entire cost on their dime for Bluff Road, and we don't have to cover that at all. So that came out a real big benefit for the city. On top of that, they redid the cost estimate, and it ended up reducing the cost $500,000. So we're at $3.4 million, which was another incredible win for Syracuse City.
Is there anything else they really need done? Because I'm okay every time we reduce it by $500,000.
I could go over there with a pick.
You have a better offer.
This shows that UDOT is being very careful about city, local government's costs, realizing that we don't have big pocketbooks as much as other people may believe that we do. We don't. We are very careful about watching every penny that is spent on every project, and we want to maximize the dollar, not to stick it to the man, right? Not to make things harder for anyone else and put the burden on someone else, but to be fair. Right. And this certainly was fair. And so I come to you with this betterment agreement. The way it is now, I'm real happy with it. There was one minor adjustment that we asked in the agreement that one of our staff members recommended, I felt was really good. And that was to include progress payments rather than, so we don't have to do a full lump sum payment to them. We can just make progress payments in small chunks as parts of the project get done. So they've already made that change in this draft that you have in front of you. So with that, I can take questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I think that's great. We've made great improvements and I would support it.
A+.
Anyone else?
Always.
I have something that I know is outside of your control, but I've had several requests from various people in the area. What opportunities do we have to move the power poles? I know they're not ours, but I've had a lot of requests to move, if we can put the power poles underground along Antelope, to try and open it up a little bit better and make it a little more aesthetically pleasing. As just the power poles running along the side of the road going out to Antelope Island kind of looks a little.
I don't know of any specific discussion. Do you, Brody, about the power poles?
We haven't with them. Obviously, that would be on
Rocky Mountain
out of our budget.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have a cost for it.
But I assuming that Rocky Mountain, I know they've buried a lot of stuff throughout the city. Can we reach out to them and ask them what their interest level is in, because they're going to have to move all of those power poles anyway. And while they're cutting down power poles and laying the wires in the ground, can we just maybe go about 6 feet deeper?
I think that it may be worth the conversation, because you can make the argument that those power poles have been hit lots of times.
And that was actually what people brought up is, I mean, power poles along Antelope appear to be targets.
Maybe because
or magnets.
Yeah, maybe because the road's going to be opened up, this is an appropriate time for them to take action that would help them not be down so much. I mean, I could see that argument flying maybe with them.
Mayor,
yes.
So in light of this discussion, it may be their policy that they're going to put it underground already, just as a matter of course of construction. But if not, yeah, we can ask them and investigate that.
I would just like to get an answer to that, so we can at least go back to the citizens that are requesting it. And in light of the accidents we've been having and the multiple power outages due to those accidents, it seems like this is an opportune time to investigate the possibility.
I think that's smart to ask. Definitely that's separate from this betterment agreement. But I think since you bring it up, I think it's a well worthwhile.
At least get it on their mind, and maybe they can.
But as far as this, great work. Can we do a little bit more?
Yeah. Side note, I did, just as a recap from one of your other requests related to this, the park and ride lot, you asked if it could go north a little bit more. So we're having that discussion to see if they can move. Excellent. There is a detention basin up in that triangular corner, so they can't go all the way north, but we're going to push that. And the second thing is some more trail access along Bluff. So that's actually we're having a meeting this week with the project manager at UDOT to discuss some of that.
Since it came up, can I ask on the schedule for 3000, there are a few residents who've asked me if it's actually going to be closed until the freeway opens, which my understanding is no, right?
No.
It's been closed a long time.
It has been closed. It's been closed since the week of Christmas. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's longer than I've ever seen us have a road closed.
It mainly became just an emergency situation because the road was not safe as they were boring. That was just an explanation. So
it is a narrow road.
I have met with the contractor out there, and their target was this week. They've got to they've just got to finish some pavement out there. That should be opening very soon. No. So the answer is no, it's not closed through the construction. It will open.
Thank you for following up on those, and we look forward to hear.
Robert, one more question before I call for a motion. I drove down Antelope towards the golf course, and the Layton Canal that is buried up there, it appeared to be a leak in that. Did you see that last couple of days?
That where the field
was really, really wet, flooded right in the middle of that.
Is it in the? I have not noticed it. Where is it in the road?
It's right. It's not in the road. It's in the field where they were digging. It's
north side of Antelope or south?
North side.
I sat on the south side.
I saw it
I
in the
saw
north side.
both at different times.
Uh-huh.
It was wet.
Okay.
There were
Okay.
There's a big puddle in the low spot in
All
that
right.
property that we just bought.
I'll follow up with that.
You look at it?
Yep.
Okay. Council, I'd entertain a motion. We're back to utility betterment.
I'll make a motion that we approve the utilities betterments in appreciation of the cost reductions.
Okay, thank you. David, second? Second by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Steve, well, let's talk about the fiscal budget. The tentative budget.
All right, I'm going to go through a few of my notes here as quick as I can. So we are presenting to you the tentative budget for fiscal year 2022. This covers July 1st of 2021 through June 30th of 2022. We had our goals retreat and our budget retreat, and we feel like we've done a pretty good job of incorporating the council's priorities into this budget. With that said, this budget presents a general fund of about $13.9 million. Within that budget, the biggest change, and a lot of the discussion we've already had, is on the proposal for the new paramedic program. That is a program we look to start on January 1st, 2022, about halfway through the budget year. This will be a 2-year transition process. Each of the next 2 fiscal years would show an increase of about $450,000 in property tax revenue. This will be to help fund 9 new paramedics and bring that over from the county. The $450,000 in this proposed budget is about $51 per home per year on the average home in Syracuse. The good news is the county is looking to offset some of that. So they provide the paramedic service currently. They would look to reduce their tax rate by about $230,000, or about $24 per home. The net increase to the user or the homeowner would be about $27 per home over the next year's budget. Also in this budget, we are proposing a slight increase on utility rates of about $1.20 per household per month. What is included in that is a 35-cent increase from the secondary water system. That is the increased price per share passed on to us from the irrigation companies. 30-cent increase from the culinary fund. This is also a pass-through from Weaver Basin Water on their rate increases. And then the final component is a 55-cent increase to help fund a new engineering tech position in our Public Works Department. Overall, this budget does propose a total of 13 new full-time employees. 9 of those are the paramedics, but it also includes the engineering tech, a park maintenance worker, and a street maintenance worker, as well as a planner. Also in this budget is a proposal to convert 2 part-time positions to full-time. That would be the museum curator and also an additional firefighter for our 3rd shift that we had not yet done. In this budget, we have a total of $8.1 million in capital projects, and then also around $3.5 million in park projects, so about $11.6 million in total capital projects, which will be funded with cash that we have in our funds. We look to pay down our debts on our 2 bonds to the tune of $1.4 million. With the budget proposal in front of you and a proposed tax increase, we would go through a truth in taxation process. Tonight, all you're doing is accepting a tentative budget proposal that is not binding. It is just a starting point in our budget discussions. The next big date will be set as June 8th. That would be our public hearing and the opportunity to approve at least an operating budget if we decide to go through truth and taxation. From there, we will set a TNT, or truth and taxation hearing, for August 10th at 6 p.m. if we decide to do that. That is all I have at this time, Mayor.
Steve, has the county granted us the 10th?
They have. I have requested that.
Okay.
And just as a note, there will be several cities doing this same process because they will also be taking on paramedics in their budgets as well.
Okay. All right. Lisa, we want to leave this out here?
Well, we've had these discussions that have culminated with this. And I know that last time we discussed it, we talked about adding that, was it 50,000? Well, I can't recall, but it was, I think all of the things that we're discussing are necessary, and most, the value in them is directly correlating with public safety. And I think if there's any duty that is the government's, it's public safety. So I am fine to approve this tentative budget.
Okay. Jordan?
One of the interesting things with all of this is, as everyone knows, inflation is real. We're seeing it everywhere. Prices are going up, especially if you try to buy a 2x4 lately. But please realize that we're undergoing those exact same things. We are still building things. We are maintaining things, and those materials are going up for us too. We have to pay the same prices as most anybody else. So with that, that's why we are contemplating some of these increases. We have all of the benefits and detriments that come along with a fastly growing city. That's the primary reason, those two things, is for the tax increase that goes a little bit more than just offset the county's reduction. But I want to make sure that everyone understands that we are being very careful with money. We have gone through this line by line, gone over ways to save money, items we could do better on, items that need a lot of help. And so I too, on those same line, I do think this is a good budget that we reviewed ad nauseum, and I too lend my support to it.
All right, thanks, Jordan. David?
So I do have, I mean, in general, I have no issues with the budget, but there is one thing that has come up as a concern. We are, and I'm, again, we're passing on the cost that's being passed on to us in secondary water. And I understand that, but I think we need to send a message back to the Secondary Water Board and help them understand that in a year where we have massive cuts to our water availability, it's a pretty hard sell to tell people that you have to pay more when we've just told them that we're getting about half of what we're getting. I understand that this is infrastructure and it's well beyond, but that correlation is very difficult for citizens to make. So I would request of the Secondary Water Board that maybe they delay such an increase by a year, and then we would likewise be able to delay that same cost, because all people are going to see is you're charging me more for giving me less. They don't understand the big picture of water shares are based on actual water and, you know, yada, yada, yada. So I just would like to make that request that we try to appeal to that agency.
Robert is the liaison, right?
Yeah, he is. And he's very attentive. I see. Yeah. So I mean, if there's a chance that we could fix that or deal with that, I'm for it.
I think that's a good point. So it's the Weber Basin Board that controls that. So we also get water from Davis Weber. They have not increased prices. It's been the Weber Basin Board, but certainly something I could bring up.
If we could do that for our citizens, if they would see the orientation of customer satisfaction versus raising in a year when we're in a severe drought, because it's not like we're getting more water by raising the price. There's not anything new to get. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that fee. And I think that would help us go a long way to making this more appealing to citizens. But in general, I'm okay with the tentative budget.
Okay.
Request.
Thank you, Dave.
Some additional counsel that you can give to residents if they have those questions. Weber Basin is a public body and they're a taxing entity that they can actually go directly to them as a constituent.
But as you well know, they know how to get a hold of us. They have no idea.
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll still go up there and we'll talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that for us.
Seth?
I just wanted to thank the staff for putting this together. This budget's a lot of labor and a lot of heartache and struggle to get to this point. I think if we could give any advice to our citizens, if they have the opportunity to look at this tentative budget and just look at the few pages that are the budget message, It's, for 9 pages. Those 9 pages contain everything they could want to know and understand as to why we make the decisions we make and why these are tough, difficult choices. And there's opportunity costs and things that get set back for higher priority items. And I think you guys have done a tremendous job in putting that together. And so I appreciate that. And I support this tentative budget.
Thank you. Corinne?
Just along with that question for the Weaver Basin, I would want to ask them, how much longer are they going to continue the ongoing increases? Because I know it was initiated by requirements by the EPA that they upgrade all of their infrastructure. And, therefore the state said, yes, you will do all this, and therefore increasing costs every year. If they have it how many years?
As long as I remember.
Exactly. Is
Yeah.
this perpetual, forever?
It's
Kind of like
eternal.
I-15, orange cones forever?
This is
for life?
year 5 of 7 on their planned increase.
Year 5 of 7. Really? Jeez. Okay. All right. At least we know. All right. And then, and speaking of inflation, did you know that just because of the increase in lumber, $64,000 has been added to the price of the home in 1 year, just because of lumber increase? And then also with looking at this budget, it's just been interesting. I have a neighbor who frequently asks me, okay, so why did it go up this year? And usually at first she's a little miffed. And then I explain, well, because we decided we needed to give the police a raise, and because water costs more this year, but you got to have water. And when I usually explain it to her, then she's like, oh, yeah, I do think the police need more. And I do think that we need to have water. And why are they charging more for water? And I'm like, I don't know. So now I've got 7 years. I can explain that. Anyway, but it really is appreciated when a resident actually asks. So I hope that they do, so that we can explain that everything is very carefully considered and nothing is frivolous, and especially their money. And we do consider it their money, and hopefully our service to them for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Council, I entertain a motion to approve the tentative budget.
Mayor, can I
Yes.
make one clarification, please? We're gonna start hiring the paramedics on January 2022. The service isn't being provided at that point by the city. That was on the record. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. Okay. Lisa, I heard a motion.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Seth. Council, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Steve, for your hard work. It's been 6 or 8 months of work. Thank you. Item 16, Paul, are you going to lead us through two or three of these?
Good evening. So we talked about this at the work session. A couple of items that were in this version. We've removed the 2 voting council members from the PAC. We've got 3 at-large, no more than 2 at-large, maybe from any one quadrant. So you could have a maximum of 3 per quadrant. And then the liaison is put in here as someone that the council can put on there. Also defined what a program entails. Those are the changes. Leave it to you.
Any discussion on this? Let's start that with Corinne.
I have reviewed it, and everything looks like what we agreed upon last meeting. So
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
I have some comments.
Yes.
So one thing I want to do on this is, I think a couple items on this need to be revised to be more of an advisory role. Specifically 2 items. Number 1 is, we talked about the 5-year improvement plan, where they are the recommending authority for that. I would like them to be an advisory authority as opposed to actually making the recommendation. I think that's more along the lines of what it's literally called Parks Advisory Committee. So I'd like to move them to an advisory role as actually making a recommendation. If they have advice they would like to say, hey, we would like this prioritized, it'll be taken and
Doesn't it say that
prioritized.
participate in an advisory capacity?
I just want to make sure it's very clear that it says right here, add recommending authority to the PAC as it relates to the creation. Oh, that's the next one down. But I'll talk about that one in a second. But yeah, it says adjustments and the prioritization of the 5-year park improvement plan. So not that they get to actually prioritize it, but they can make recommendations. I don't want them going through and revamping the whole thing and then gets what's presented. They can say, hey, we would like this to go higher. I just want to make sure that it's more of an advisory as opposed to actually doing the prioritization, because I want Cresta to have the power to prioritize the parks as she sees fit. And as a second item, that same thing I want with regards to the programs. I don't think we need to have these guys approving program changes. I think Cresta has a lot more visibility into this and her team and staff than the advisory committee does. But if they want something to be changed, I would love for them to be able to make those recommendations and provide advice. But at the same time, I don't think it all needs to be approved through there. But they can provide advice and counsel. And I think Cresta would love to hear that, as would the rest of the committee. But I just want to make sure that they're not a gatekeeper for a change that Cresta feels needs to be made possibly quickly.
So looking at the text of the ordinance, looking at, in subsection A, it says it participates in an advisory capacity by making recommendations to the council regarding those things. So they wouldn't have any power to change anything. It would just be, and it mentions that they're advisors.
Okay.
And then on the programs, it says make recommendations to the Parks and Recs director regarding the creation. So it's all recommended. They've never given them any power.
I just want to make sure that was abundantly clear that is what we're going forward with. And maybe I missed the nuance, but thank you for making those updates.
Yeah, we better hurry and improve this so that the Parks Committee can look at the U Football League. Right? Because we've already sent it to the U Park PAC. So
Paul, if we're reading that correctly, then, so if a program does intend, or there's some proposal put forward for a new program, does it need to come through there, or is this just a place where programs can be considered in an advisory capacity? I'd like it not to have to mandatorily be through there.
So if you look at the proposed change to 060 for the Parks and Rec director, it does say that she shall request the recommendation. So if you want to change that to may, you can make that change.
But it says at any time that she seeks to do something. So, oh yeah, you're right. It would need to be to May.
Yeah, if she wants to do it, it would need to go through PAC just for their recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just do a straw poll. May?
May is fine.
May.
Would you make that?
Good.
Would you make that change, Paul?
Yeah, that just when you make your motion, just mention that change.
Good catch.
Any other discussion?
One of my concerns still remains with the 5-year planning. We do 5-year planning for several different things, and it doesn't go through a separate committee. So I'm wondering, I have no problem with them looking at a 5-year plan and saying, hey, you know what? We see a need for maybe this to rearrange, and we'd like to make that recommendation. But I'm concerned that this is worded in a way that it suggests that a 5-year plan comes from this committee. I don't want to create a new, we certainly don't do that with capital funding. That's met with staff figures that out and presents it to us, and if we feel like it needs to change, we make an argument for that in council. I would like it to be handled the same way. I would like to see that the Parks Department kind of evaluates our 5-year needs, because they're hands-on day to day. I think they're more active. So if they want to review the 5-year plan and make suggestions, I think that's appropriate. I don't think that they should create the 5-year plan.
As I read it, I think it does talk about the advisory role, and that.
That's the part that's about this that's vague to me, is that while it says advisory role, then in the bullet points, it makes it sound like it's more of a shall than a may. And I'm concerned about that.
You're talking about the bullet points of my memo or my staff memo?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Looking at the language of the ordinances,
okay.
Perhaps I oversimplified it in my bullet points, but there's no indication they create anything. It says they participate in advisory capacity by making recommendations to the city council regarding the development and design of parks and related improvements, adjustments to recreation programs, and in the prioritization of the 5-year park improvement plan. So it doesn't say they generate it. It doesn't say they create it. They're
All right.
acting as advisors and making recommendations on
All
it.
right, so I'll remove my objection to that. I am concerned that the way this is, look at bullet point 3, allows the mayor to refer projects, programs, and activities to the PAC, so long as the item is discussed in a council meeting. If it's discussed in a council meeting, can it come from the council?
Yeah.
But the council could disagree, and the mayor under this provision would be allowed to send it anyway.
If it was discussed there, yeah, he could.
Why would we do that? I mean, if the council, and again, has nothing to do with you, Mike. It has to do with a future mayor that maybe says, okay, the council disagrees with me, I'm going to do it anyway. Why would we add this power to the role of the mayor when it's not, we don't do other things that way?
I think the context of this was if it was discussed in a work session and you didn't have a vote taken, then the mayor could take it from the work session without waiting for it to go to a vote in a more formal setting.
In this case, if the work session disagreed in general, you're giving the mayor a new power to be able to forward it anyway.
Maybe that wording could just be changed that the mayor in a work session could hold a straw poll, and if the straw poll.
Maybe you add advice and consent of the council. I don't know. I don't want to create a new power of an independent role.
I hate to put in straw poll discussions and stuff in an ordinance. That's odd. I mean, if the council wants to override something that the mayor's done in a
What about
session, that'd be possible.
The council may direct the mayor to send any item to a.
The problem we ran into before was how do they direct? Is it directing through a vote? And that's usually how the council does things, is through votes.
So just directly.
I'm actually okay with it as is, simply because in the end, we control the budget to fund whatever program comes back.
Right.
And so I don't think it's really a new power. He's allowed to ask for some advice from a bunch of citizens sitting on a committee, and I'm actually okay with it as is.
And I also think that he does that in general in other things where he'll ask the staff to meet with advisory committees. I don't think that we need to strip him of the ability just generally to have somebody advise. It would be different if there was money involved, if there was, I just think that this is a very basic right of the council or the mayor to have somebody discuss something.
Well, I think that's already there. This I think goes beyond that.
I'm good with it because, again, we have the ultimate say in whether or not something happens, and the mayor would be understanding of that. And so it's not a threat.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with it. I'm okay if we make the change from a shall to a may in that specific location. I understand the concern, but I think it's largely mitigated by the fact that we control the budget, and if you don't want something, you don't have to fund it.
I can't speak for other mayors. I can only speak for myself, but I would think most mayors would see themselves as a facilitator and not a decision maker. And that's how I see myself is if I've talked to you independently or if I've talked to you in a group and I have a feeling for where the direction of the council is going to go, that the mayor should have the right to just call Cresta and said, would you bring this to the planning, to the PAC and have them discuss it and give us an advice?
I'm okay with that.
Again, this was not about you personally. I just think back to a time a couple of mayors ago when there was a lot of discussion of, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm the mayor. And I would hate to put us in that position.
But then you could censure me, right? You could, in a public meeting, you could censure me if I did something as brazen as that.
I'm not suggesting you would. I'm just kind of thinking to future councils and trying to keep away from creating.
Well, in my role, trying to move us along, I'd entertain a motion.
I move.
We
Let me
can
find it.
find the agenda.
I move.
I'm missing the printed
Sorry,
one.
I know, I'm looking for the. I move that we amend the ordinances governing Parks Advisory Committee and Parks and Recreation Director
With a adjustment.
with, changing the word may or shall to may in 2.30.060 Parks and Recreation Director.
Okay, do I have a second?
B.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jordan. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, would you record that 4-1 with David voting no? Paul, let's go to 17.
Okay, so we've been discussing administrative appeals. There are 4 sections here that we've been addressing. There were the 4 things that we discussed. So rather than go through it line by line, if you have any questions or any additional, any changes or anything you'd like, let me know. Otherwise, just those 4 were addressed and put the appeal authority in where indicated.
Dave, do you want to lead us?
We talked about this and it appears to be as we talked about it. So I'm fine without any further discussion from me.
Anyone else?
Just on Paul, there was one area where under the planning commission being the appellate group, under I, it just says the planning commissioner hears the case de novo. I think it means the planning commission, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make that correction.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the only thing I saw.
Do I have a motion?
So save any other spelling errors, which we would correct. I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Thank you, David.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Last one, Paul.
All right, I've checked. This one is the updated policy. So yeah, as discussed a few months ago in the work session, this includes the changes that we talked about, including guidance for transgender or LGBTQ students. So any other discussion or changes, please let me know.
Okay. Jordan.
No, we've had this for a while. We've captured all of my concerns and comments, and so.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the youth programs overnight trips policy.
Okay, that's resolution 2111.
2111.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have heard from Corinne. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that's 4-1. With Dave, there's a no. Public comment. Cassie, do we have anybody with us with Zoom yet that would like to talk?
Looks like we just have one resident that's participating, but I don't see them raising their hand or
Okay.
moving to unmute.
Okay, sir. You're a frequent flyer?
I am. Yeah, Josh Hughes at 1789 South Mills Lane. Sorry, I know everyone's tired and probably wants to go home, but I missed the initial public comment. I didn't realize we were in person, which is so nice to be in person and see everybody again. Some people have less hair than last time and others have more, and it's just fun. Anyway, first, thank you very much for your vote earlier on our zone change in our preliminary plat. But I guess that the comment I actually wanted to make was I've, over the last year or two, been really impressed with certain members of staff, and I wanted to say things in some public comments, and then I thought, oh, maybe it'd be looked at weird that I'm trying to butter up people, but I just decided the other day, I'm like, if you have something nice to say, you should just say it, right? So anyway, tonight I just wanted to say how impressed I was with Brian Bloman. He's not here tonight, so he won't be, embarrassed, I guess, unless he's online. But anyway, I didn't know how much I appreciated Brian Bloman until I've worked with several other city engineers now. And Brian just has a good down-to-earth approach, I think, to engineering. It seems like I guess I thought engineering was all science, but it seems like sometimes it's kind of an art. And I've seen some city engineers just kind of get caught up in weird philosophical things, but Brian just makes a lot of good common sense, I think, decisions and recommendations at times, rather than just say, hey, you got a problem here. Often he has a solution that comes with it. And anyway, I've just been really impressed with Brian Bloman, and I'll save some other staff compliments for later meetings. But anyway, appreciate Brian Bloman, and I appreciate all of you guys' time.
Anyone else? Preston, you want to say anything?
You may, not shall, but you may say something if you want.
Let's talk about council announcements. Let me start down there with you, Corinne. Can we?
Okay, as far as the Syracuse Museum, they are talking about doing, well, first of all, they've completed a whole bunch of renovations on their different displays and cleaning up different things. They've done all the QR codes so you can walk around yourself and unassisted if needed and have a good tour there. They are also going to be starting to institute a sip and learn, which is kind of like a afternoon tea thing. And they voted on that today. And it will be restricted to one room for any food so that nothing is hurt by food in any sort of way. But they're just trying to
sponsor that. Man, you would have so many people there.
I know. I'm like, yeah, I'll bring my girlfriends. We'll be having a nice little afternoon there. So anyway, I'm just really impressed with their volunteers as well. Now, and they did say that right now they're a little bit stressed on volunteers because they've had a few out with health problems and a couple that do a lot for them. Her mother has cancer and her sister, and so they're caring for that, and they haven't been able to help. So if you know of anyone, you can refer to them to help during these downtimes. That would really be great. We did have a gentleman show up today who is 21, who's going to volunteer in between his summer before he starts his pre-med degree. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to talk to my kid when he gets home from his mission. So just putting the word out there, send him over. They'd love to have you help for a little bit. Age is a problem over there, so help them out. There you go. Oh, mosquito abatement's on Thursday, so you'll get a report then.
Okay. Thank you. Seth?
No comments other than just for the rest of the council. You guys saw hopefully my addendum to the the planning commission report. And so it clarifies some of the information that I might have misstated a little bit from my recollection of the meeting, but you guys have that available specifically. I think we'll be seeing an item in the next work session. So, and that's really the only thing I have.
Thank you. Dave?
So I have a couple of things. First, shout out to the Arts Council who held a concert last night at the high school. It was good for them and everyone else, I think, to have them back together again and providing some culture in our community. They will now take the summer off, as they traditionally do, for the orchestra, but that gives them time to focus on a musical, which is coming up. They are going to do Big Fish, which they were going to do last year, but COVID canceled that. So that's in rehearsals. Watch for dates and times for them. And then I come to you, council, for your advice at this point, because I have an issue that I've been working on with staff. As you all remember, and the reason I'm asking here is I represent you, right, to the sewer board. So it's not me, it's a group. As you recall, we had a group come to the city and say they would like to build a 50-acre sporting complex that they would run independently. And obviously the vote for that was that we needed our land more, and we weren't ready to give that up. And I voted in that favor, and I'm fine with it. But there's another opportunity for that group that they might be able to build their facility by leasing some of the surrounding land that the sewer board owns, and leases as agriculture, which is a very low lease rate, And so they may be able to do their thing there. Now, it's going to come up for a vote tomorrow night, or not tomorrow, Thursday night. And I am kind of faced with how do I best represent the city? So if we want this to happen, I think that their best shot is for me to put on my city hat at that meeting and say a few words in what it means to the city. If we don't want that to happen, then I certainly can put on my city hat and say a few words that it probably doesn't do what we would like here in the city. So first I ask for your opinion on which direction you'd like to see that go, because it is kind of a vote that's going to be in the balance.
Can I get some more clarification?
Sure.
I don't recall what group this is and what 50-acre.
So this
et
is
cetera,
the
et cetera.
group that came to us and wanted to build a baseball complex that would also include pickleball. And they would be the group that I think they call themselves DBATs, and their funding group is called MLM Holdings.
I vaguely remember.
Is this the dome one?
Yeah, the dome one. They would do an indoor thing. They're proposing that they would do they would use 50 acres of agricultural land that is not being used very well right now. That is
Sewer
south-
district.
That is the south of the sewer plant. And they would build a six-plex softball diamond where it would be strictly a privately managed thing, but they're going to try and lure in groups of people from out of state that would come and stay here. And of course, my pitch to surrounding cities are we don't actually have any hotels, so it does benefit you as well. They would eat in our restaurants, they would frequent our stores and buy gas. And
I can't think of a reason not to support that.
I kind of felt that way too, but I felt like I hadn't really asked. Because last time we visited this, it's probably not worth us giving up our land.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I totally agree with.
But the sewer district land is severely underutilized, and I would prefer that it be used for something as opposed to nothing.
Especially just for green, open, yeah. Anybody that it brings people to Syracuse, yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see a negative. Does anybody else that I'm missing?
I just want to remind you that this is a straw poll.
Yes, not a vote, but I mean, if I'm going to represent you in a meeting, I asked Brody, he said, you probably should bring it up and get a feel for how your city feels so that I'm not doing this independently.
I just want to know, Cresta, are we missing anything where it would create any kind of burden or anything on our own operations or?
I look at this as more of like a competitive.
And be
So it's
adult,
just completely.
be more adult league.
Yeah, it's
Just brings more.
Might actually create more excitement for our youth leagues, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of feeding up
And
to
if
this.
kids decide to leave the recreation and go play competitive, it happens all the time.
Yep.
So this is like.
We're here to offer stuff at affordable cost. for kids that
Just
don't
say,
wanna
we're
do
not really
competitive
money
stuff.
makers, are we?
No.
We're not really money makers.
No.
More
No.
of a break even.
We're not profit.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be.
And in their plans, I would report that they do have some things that we don't offer. For example, they have a wiffle ball complex. They believe that it teaches skills to play in a wiffle ball league. They also have some other things that they're talking about. They are funded by a group of Utah businessmen.
Mayor Paul is raising his hand.
This is becoming quite extended. I mean, if we wanted to discuss it, it really should have been on the agenda. So I would just recommend wrapping it up really soon.
Okay, so I have your approval to say that we're pro this for the city. And then I will work to that end. I just can report to you then that I did take them out and show them land on 2 occasions. That is the sewer board's land. As a board member, I have that access. I took the mayor with me on one of those trips. We looked at this, so I'm just reporting where that's at. If this passes, they're asking for a 100-year lease, so they plan to be here forever. So
Okay.
I will work towards the pro on this then.
It looks like you have
Okay.
support of the council. Lisa?
Okay, so we're having a chamber meeting on the 18th, next week, at the normal location, which would be Glen Eagle Golf Course. We're providing lunch for any council members who would like to attend. We'd love to have you there because we've invited other city councils and managers to attend. We want to get more of their input about just basically connecting businesses to cities and giving them information and getting all the input that we can have from other city members. So if you'd like to attend that, I'd love to let them know that. So just get with me on that.
What day is that?
That is the 18th,
Tuesday,
next Tuesday, a week from today.
12:30.
12:30. Well, actually, we're bumping it up to 12 o'clock to meet, and then 12:30 because some people have a shorter lunch and we want to get right into it. So 12 o'clock is when that will begin. Then we have, I just want to remind you of the signs that are right out front. And I think it would be a great example if we had anybody who lives in these areas, any council members, to just grab one of those signs and be an advocate for it and for our youth. Our youth commission, we had a kickoff event last week. We had small numbers, but it's okay. It's going to build. So we're down to 3 advisor couples and 6 kids. And I know that Cresta has a daughter who wants to be on it. And we would love to have anybody's youth. 16 to 18 is the general age range, and we would love to have them. We're going to do one month will be a service or activity, and the next month we'll be meeting with a staff member and kind of learning internship possibilities or just information about the staff's position. So anyway, if you have any youth that would be interested, we'd love to have them. And I'm looking forward to the police banquet this weekend, this Friday. Looking forward to just celebrating all that you guys do. We're sure appreciative. And I think that's it.
Is it just a recognition?
Just, yeah. Yeah, sorry, when I say banquet, I mean recognition.
The banquet
It used
with a
to be,
fast.
Here?
I'll bring a sack lunch. Is that what you're suggesting? Okay, I'll bring a sack lunch and
And it's here.
It's here.
yeah, it'll just be here in this room.
It's a no-share potluck.
That's it.
Jordan?
All right. Just to echo some of the things that were said earlier, I also want to thank the Lions Club specifically for all of their efforts throughout the city. You can see the items they've donated. We have pavilions, we have shade structures, we have benches, we have fountains, we have ongoing fingerprinting. The Lions Club is a huge benefit to this community, and if anyone out there has the ability to join them, I would highly encourage it. They are a great organization that has done so much good in this community. So,
And the Lady Lions meet the second Thursday of the month. They have about 18 to 20 ladies, but they need more youth. So join.
yep, they just do great things. And again, kudos to our police department and all of our first responders for all you guys do throughout our community. But with it being the police, again, thank you. And for the public utilities, you guys don't get enough recognition. So I wanted to throw that out there too. The stuff that these guys deal with, if they don't deal with it properly, make headlines, everything from police to fire to backed up sewers. So we want to thank all of them for the efforts they do to keep us safe. And the Disaster Preparedness Committee already reported on our disaster exercise, so I won't go into that again. And that's all I have. One last thing. Anytime you can get the sewer district to use land for something other than nothing, I am fully supportive.
Thank you.
The only thing I have is, Lisa, you and I and Brody and Noah probably need to sit down and talk about an outreach program that Weber State is doing in relationship to the Chamber of Commerce.
Nice.
We met with a fellow a couple of days ago that has grant money for entrepreneurship. If you want to open a business, free money that will help guide you through. So we thought maybe the Chamber of Commerce ought to be involved in that too. So maybe a meeting with him and the Chamber of Commerce sometime in the future.
Great.
Would be good. And Brody, that's all I've got. Do you have?
Yeah, so I have to apologize. I don't have the manager's report out yet. Had a snafu in my timing when we get into SharePoint. I accidentally had the manager's reports deleted, so we had to recover them. So I'll get those out in the next day or two. But I will report on 2 items. We met today with Davis Behavioral Health and Davis County Dispatch, along with Paul and Chief Atkin. We are spearheading a pilot program, if you will, of using the mobile crisis outreach team, MCOT. I always say MCOT. I don't really always know what it means. But this is the mobile 24/7 hotline for behavioral crisis, mental health crisis that people can call, and Davis Behavioral Health will respond. But what we're doing is a pilot program to incorporate that into the dispatch system, so into 911, so that we can actually better screen calls that should be handled by a crisis intervention team versus a police officer. So we're working out some details, but what we're hoping is that will be a model for the rest of the county, and and that can be something that can grow. And then the other update, our project on Jensen Pond is moving forward. We are going to have a little bit of a delay. We met today with the state, and we felt it was more appropriate to wait on planting the new plants that are on the plan because of the extra amount of water it will take this year to get them established in the middle of the summer. So we're going to look at planting them in the fall instead. But good news is Chad Smout, our assistant parks director, he submitted an application for a grant for a floating dock, a fishing dock, ADA accessible, and we got $10,000 towards that. So we'll probably be asking for maybe some surplus money at the end of the year, possibly to put those platforms in and the floating dock this summer. And so we can get that done since we have the grant money now. And then we'll plant in the fall. And the planting is funded by the state. So just want to give you an update on how that's going to go.
Thank you. And I might mention, Seth, when we get a little further down the road with MCOT, I'm wondering if we could invite you into those meetings with your background and your family with police and mental health. I think you'd probably be a person that would be great to represent the council as we move that forward. Okay, council, I'm going to declare a recess, and we are going to recess into the conference room. Been a long time since we've been in the conference room. Where is the conference room? We're going to ask that you mask in there, because we are city employees, and city employees until the 17th. That's the date, Brody. The 17th is our next big date. City employees are asked to mask when they enter another person's office space. So we'll adjourn, we'll recess into that to hold an executive, a closed session. So I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Corinne. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's recess to the conference room.
Do we turn off the monitors? Do we turn off the monitors?